What is up, everyone? My name is SBJ, and this is a special episode of the Pokemon Podcast. It's super effective. Before we get to this, let's introduce the round table of contestants. I don't know what that means. We have Travis here.
You started this by saying, "What's up, everybody?" But this isn't for everybody. This is for that special few who are willing to chuck in a little change to hear this episode.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. We'll get to why it's been delayed too. We also have regular old Will here.
You need to be careful with your words. You need to be real careful with your words, especially since I'm going to see you in less than 2 weeks, and I stay angry for a long time.
I get over things real quick. Will, not so much.
Not at all.
Regular and old. That's so brutal.
My motto is never forgive and never forget.
And we have our classic...
I forget if I forgive or not. I don't remember.
Well, we have our classic fourth wheel here. We have Micah, the brave.
Can I just say how disappointed I am that it's not Logan? But whatever, go on.
Oh, thanks.
Oh.
The daggers are out on this episode.
Dude, he called us contestants. It's time to travel the weakest link.
I hope the shade continues throughout the whole episode.
I bet when you guys shelled out money to pay for episodes like this, you didn't expect that you'd hear my voice. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have paid anything.
Oh, yeah. So if you're listening to this, you are either a Kickstarter backer that pledged at the $10 or higher level, or you are a Patreon backer that pledges at the $10 or higher level. Now, there's not that many Patreon backers pledging at the $10 or higher level, but originally this episode was Kickstarter exclusive, and I figured that we have like 15 people on Patreon that pledge $10 a month, and they've been pledging that for a couple months, so I figured we'd give them access to this episode too. Now, like I said before, this episode is designed for Kickstarter only. That's why you guys are hearing this or hopefully listening to it. Hopefully you'll enjoy this, but the reason it was so late was there was a lot of microphone changing. I have no good excuse. I have a lot of little excuses, but it doesn't really compensate for why it's late. I guess I'm sorry it's late, but to be fair, we're still earlier than most Kickstarters on the delivery, so we have that going for us. I finally got Travis a microphone that I think that they and I are both satisfied with.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
Cool. Will has a microphone that is adequate to his voice, and Micah, I didn't give Micah anything. He bought his own microphone. I guess that's why he's here.
Well, I'm trying to think that you didn't give me anything either.
I did send you a couple things. One thing.
Oh wait, that little that foam. Yes.
That foam,
okay.
yeah.
Yes, the foam.
Yeah, yes. And there will be more upgrades and everything because of the Patreon, and obviously the Kickstarter helped with that. The other reason why the episode was so kind of delayed was because I never knew a strong enough topic to deliver to you guys. Pokemon news comes and goes, and there's a lot of Pokemon news. Some weeks there's not enough other weeks, but I didn't want to do like let's do a Safari Zone episode, but then it's like that's something we could do for everyone, and I wouldn't want everyone to miss out on something like that. Or let's do like our favorite gym leaders, but again, that's kind of for everyone. Finding the topic was what took the longest. And I think the topic today, which will take up the entire episode, will be both entertaining and fun for us and fun for you guys. What we're doing, what this episode is about, is before Generation 7 comes out, before we get X amount of new Pokemon, we are going to do a top 10 of R4's top 10 Pokemon smashed together. And the show itself is designed around debate and cutting favorite Pokemon out that we like to really form 10 Pokemon that the four of us can agree on. So what's going to happen is
none of mine are going to make it to the actual final top 10 because no one likes any of the Pokemon I like.
Same. So why don't we just cut to the chase and take Steve and Will's top 10, cut them in
and then
half,
whittle them down
together.
We're all going to go around, and we have 10 Pokemon each that we've picked prior to the show. So our personal top 10 favorite Pokemon, and mine always changes, I feel. So I wrote my top 10 this past week, which would probably be different if you give me another week to think about it. But we're all gonna go around the table and nominate our Pokemon, and then kind of explain why we like that Pokemon. Then we're gonna have a list of 40 or so Pokemon, because out of the four of us, we might share one or two favorites. So maybe we'll have like 38 Pokemon. And then once that's done, we're going to go round table again, and we're going to then pick a Pokemon to eliminate. So there's going to be a list of 40, 10 of our Pokemon each, and then let's start with Micah and say, Micah, out of the 40 you see, which one do you think doesn't belong on the list? And let's say that Travis picks Vanilluxe. Spoiler, he probably did pick Vanilluxe, I'm not sure, but so Micah goes, I think Vanilluxe can cut. I don't think Vanilluxe is top 10 material. Travis has a chance then to defend and keep it on the list, but then we know in the future that Vanilluxe has already been, outed once. So at some point, there's going to be, everyone's going to defend to a point where we're going to have to go around again, and then Will can go, all right, Travis, this list is getting thin. I still don't think Vanilluxe is top 10. We're going to cut it. At that point, Travis would have to have a really, really strong argument to keep Vanilluxe from getting cut twice. And somehow, we're going to get it down to 10 Pokemon. I don't know how. Once we get down to 10, we're going to arrange those 10 into a top 10. And that is going to be your episode.
A+.
So I think that hopefully it will cause some debate. It will cause some laughter. It will bring out some personalities. That's kind of the big thing I wanted to grab on, is just our personalities, and how Micah and I were talking about this before the show, of how after we made our list, we felt like we fit into a certain type of Pokemon personality, and I don't want to spoil what that is, but
I learned a lot about myself writing this list that I didn't know before.
Yeah, so I think this is something we could probably even do after Gen 7 comes out, or even with another group of people, whether this list would be so drastic if Logan was here, or if Irene was here, or if anyone else was here to add to that or to subtract to that. We could probably get rid of a lot of flower Pokemon if we cut Will out right now, but...
Wait, what makes you think I have a single flower Pokemon on my list?
I feel like you have one flower Pokemon on your list.
The avatar that I'm looking at, that is your avatar right now, is literally a flower Pokemon.
Well... I don't think it's a flower Pokemon, so...
What we're gonna, I'm also recording my screen in the Google Doc, because we need to keep a list. So not only that we know what 40 there are, but so we can update you what the list is. So if you hear a little bit of typing, I know that normally in an episode of It's Super Effective, I'm very against typing or eating or other noises, because I want the show to sound as good as possible. But in this episode, there probably will be a little typing, because I have not seen anyone else's list, so I don't know what they actually picked. So I do want to type and have them add it to the list, so we have this ultimate list that we can start whittling down. Because it would be more awkward or more not pleasant to hear if we're trying to recall the two of Travis's Pokemon, because we didn't write them down. But yeah, that's our intro. Hopefully you enjoy this. I think it's time to get into it. Does anyone want to start with their first Pokemon? And we can kind of go round table here. Or do you guys?
How do we go around in a circle when we're over the internet?
Yeah, well, how about I start? We'll go to Travis. We'll go to Will, and then we'll go to Micah. That's kind of from first appearance.
The order of how important we are to the show.
Yeah.
Bingo. Nailed it.
Yes, I was gonna say the order of when we first appeared on the show, but importance
6 of one, half dozen of the other.
But the claws are out, so.
All right, this episode's already brutal. All right, my first pick to go on this list is Chandelure. I don't know if that's surprising to anyone. I think Chandelure is one of the best Pokemon of Generation 5. Ghost Fire, which is a very unique type, and he's based off of Chandelure. And now when I see Chandelures in public spaces, I always accidentally say Chandelure. So that is why I'm nominating Chandelure for my first Pokemon on my list.
All right, so will
it
you
also
ever...
makes sense to me now why you say lure.
I was just going to say the same thing. It's will you ever pronounce it correctly?
Lure.
No,
Lure.
it has 2 syllables. Lure.
Lure.
There you go. 2 syllables. Lure.
Oh my God, it's happening.
It's all downhill. Oh,
Chandelure.
Maybe that is why I say lure, because of Chandelure. Top 10
Chandelure.
material right there. All right, Travis, what do you got?
Angler.
What do you got?
So I actually have mine even on my own list ranked 10 to 1. So my number 10, I actually had a change of heart in the last few minutes before we started recording this. Previously, this number 10 spot was held by Celebi, but I changed my mind because now my top 10 list got an injection of swag from Honchkrow. Honchkrow, do I have to type when I say them?
You can type it in after or before when somebody else is talking. I'm just making the list here.
Okay. So the reason I like Honchkrow, so for all these, I'll give a personal reason and then an attempt at an objective reason. The personal reason for Honchkrow is Generation 4 is the generation where my brother and I were quite close, where my brother and I played together the most. And a running joke grew out of that playthrough where my brother likes Honchkrow even more than I do and played through the game, his run through of Pearl with Honchkrow, and perpetually said that he was rolling with the Honch, which isn't funny, but it also really is funny.
I don't know. I laughed instantly.
So that's the personal reason for it. Aesthetically, I also just think it's cool. And then for the less personal reason, the design of sort of like a Prohibition era gangster in a Pokemon, and making that concept into this sort of elegant crow, I think is a beautiful way to craft that concept of that time period and that group of people into monster design, and I think that's awesome. So Honchkrow is my number 10.
Awesome. You're column 2, by the way, in the Google Doc.
Okay.
Will, what do you got for us?
So what am I gonna go with first? I don't want to presume any sort of order of favoritism,
Like I did.
There are clear. Yes, you did. You said number 10 was Honchkrow, so we know that's the first one you don't care about. Easy to knock out. You got to understand strategy, brother.
We know the first cut.
No. Yeah, like it doesn't matter because I wouldn't care about defending that one as much.
So
Dang.
let me go with the one that everybody knows is absolutely going to be on my list, without question. Always. For
There's
all
two
time.
I know are gonna be on your list.
Don't be so sure.
No,
I'm pretty dang sure.
Forever.
But Cyndaquil would be an easy add on my list,
That was one
just
of the
because that's just my favorite starter of all the starters ever. Well, maybe that's actually up for debate in my own mind, but seeing as I have multiple voices in my head, they each get to have a favorite. But Cyndaquil is just a very strong one with a number of the voices in my head for its use of my own name in the Pokemon name, and the fact that it's the cutest starter of, well, almost the cutest starter of all the starters.
All right, we know we're cutting Cyndaquil because Will's going back and forth.
Yeah. But I love it. It's so cute. It's a little fire mouse, and I have and it just. It's cuddly and warm. I know I've gone over this in past episodes of the podcast, but Cyndaquil is just such a sweet, nice, warm, friendly little guy that's absolutely has to be on my list.
All right. Do you want to add that? Micah, what do we got? What do we got for your first pick?
All right, so when I wrote this list, I didn't write it in any real specific order. I went accidentally by generation and kind of went through each generation, and I wanted to pick Pokemon that I liked from each generation, and so I.
For those just listening to the audio, Will just throw in poop emoji into Micah's column on our Google document.
Off to a great start.
It's gonna be a 7-hour episode.
I feel well respected, and like my points are going to be taken into consideration. This is going really great for me. So it's my order, I guess, is by generation.
Okay.
I have a few from each, and I wrote like a paragraph for each of these for why I think that they should be on the list. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with a personal reason initially, and then when I need to defend them, because I inevitably will, I have more reasons.
All right.
That are specific to these Pokemon. So my first Pokemon is Gengar. The reason for that is because, similar to Travis's reason with Honchkrow, my brother and I both started with Generation 1, and we were both really into it. And the Pokemon that we, even over time, have continued to love the most has been Gengar, because he's such a weird and fun Pokemon. He's so straight. But my first memory of Gengar was watching him on the show when they did the episode where they went into the mansion, Ash and Pikachu and the other starter Pokemon went into the mansion, and Ghastly Haunter and Gengar just terrorized them. And it was probably one of the most fun episodes, in my opinion, from the Kanto region.
I do remember that episode. It was good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's also the episode where Ash's soul left his body and he almost didn't get back into it.
That's why it was so fun.
My second choice is actually a legendary Pokemon. Oh, my mistake. It is a mythical Pokemon. It will be Jirachi from Generation 4. Look, my favorite Pokemon. One of my favorite Pokemon. I don't even know what generation from. 3?
I think it's 3. It was like the Celebi of Generation 3.
The Celebi of Generation.
Or the Mew of Generation 3 for
there you go.
Typical way of articulating it.
Or Gen the Victini of Generation 5.
Then Gen 4 had Manaphy and Fione.
Oh, yeah. They're not as cool. Yeah, I like Jirachi a lot. I think, to me, Jirachi was never on my radar until I saw Jirachi Wishmaker, one of the Pokemon movies. And just seeing Jirachi in motion and actually that is the first movie where I noticed Jirachi's eye on its stomach, that it opens, and it's kind of creepy, but at the same time, it's really, really cool. Mostly creepy. Maybe I have a theme of Chandelure and Jirachi both being kind of creepy Pokemon. But I love the anime and the aspect of seeing Pokemon actually having fluid movement and interacting and how they react in the environment. I think that's really cool. And that's one of my biggest draws to the anime. And Jirachi Wishmaker made me a huge fan of just Jirachi and that Pokemon. So yeah, that's my second choice. Travis?
Since no one else is doing 10 to 1 order, I'll stop doing it and go in a random order. Another Pokemon on my top 10 list is Meowth. That's right.
I mean, that comes as no surprise to anyone. I think you just said that 2 weeks ago.
That was a really good pun.
Oh, that too. Wow, I missed that.
It was really good.
Let that joke sink before I go in. Okay. Meowth is great to me personally because when I took the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon 2 Explorers of Time quiz, it told me I was a Meowth because I am sassy. That's when I realized how identical Meowth and I are. We're both little wimps that basically can't defend ourselves, but we talk a big game. But I also like it separated from the characterization of the anime. I also just think the design of the Pokemon as the like a lucky cat that I don't know if it is Japanese or if generally just East Asian, but I think it has Japanese origins of the lucky cat statues that it's based on. I think that's neat. And then obviously the Meowth I don't actually like the Meowth character in the anime as much as a lot of people, as much as I like the Pokemon generally, but I know a lot of people like it, so you're not going to strike it down because you like Meowth.
So, do you know the fable of Neko-chan?
No.
So it does harken back to Chinese times, but there was a nobleman riding a horse close to a Buddhist temple, and he was stopping to rest under a tree because he saw a storm coming, and he saw a cat at the door of the temple beckoning to him to come forward. And as the nobleman entered the temple, lightning struck the tree and it fell where he had been on his horse. So the beckoning cat saved him from certain disaster, and therefore the beckoning cat is seen as lucky.
Sounds like that horse died, though.
Brief.
No, I know.
That horse, not so much.
That horse, not lucky.
He rode his horse into the temple.
Oh, okay, I see. All right.
Because it wasn't an alpaca. That's why.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Will, what's your Pokemon?
My next Pokemon is going to be Chespin, another wonderful starter that has given me so much happiness. I have a Chespin hat. I played Chespin on Pokemon Y. That was my starter from Pokemon Y. And I actually, throughout playing that game, brought him up to level 100 because I loved him so much. I never let him evolve. So I do have a level 100 Chespin. And he's absolutely one of my favorite starters because he's so cute and so sassy in the cartoon. And he always falls in love with everybody and they never return his affections. So he's very much like me.
Okay. All right.
Chespin.
Peace.
Chespin. Micah, what is your second Pokemon on the list?
My second Pokemon is Eevee. Not only because Eevee is super adorable, it's like a little puppy cat that you can hold, and it's adorable and it's cute. That's it. That's the only argument.
Who invited the Gen 1er to this debate?
That's the only two Gen 1 Pokemon.
It's like the Donald Trump of the American political system now. Wow. Let's go back to let's make Pokemon great again. Let's go back to Gen 1. Yeah.
That's not the only reason why.
Third Pokemon.
Wait. I'm not done.
No, you can hold the Eevee debate when we eliminate it from the list of the future.
Let's cut our rationale shorter because all these will be argued anyway.
Yeah, they're all going to be argued anyway in a sec. Well, maybe some of them won't be argued, but my third Pokemon is also a Generation 1 Pokemon. Pretty, I think, predictable at this point. It's going to be Farfetch'd. I don't know the exact reason I like Farfetch'd at the moment. I never actually knew why. I like bird/duck Pokemon, and so Farfetch'd was the Pokemon in Generation 1 that I was actually really upset that I couldn't catch in the wild because I hated the only way you could get it was from that trainer guy who trades you, and his name is Dux, and I hate when I cannot rename Pokemon, but that's always stuck with me. Farfetch'd. Travis, what do you got?
That's one of two guaranteed Gen 1 Pokemon on your list.
Yes.
I'm going to do the only. It's strange because I love Gen 5 and I love a lot of the Gen 5 designs, but I'm going to do the only Gen 5 Pokemon on my list, which all of you saw coming, which is Vanilluxe. Vanilluxe is great because the main reason is because I loved it instantly just because of its aesthetic and cheerfulness when it was announced, and I loved that it's ice cream. And then when people started hating it, I got really defensive and loved it even more.
All right. Good choice. Will, third Pokemon.
My third Pokemon is going to be one of my other all-time favorites. I think it's my favorite mythical, Victini. Love Victini. I would get a tattoo. I will get a tattoo of Victini someday. But I just love the little, fire, luck, victory Pokemon. He assures you're going to win. And I played a Victini deck at U.S. Nationals one year. So it's just always been good to me. Love my little Victini. There you go.
Micah, you're number 3.
Get ready to hate it. My number 3 choice, is Celebi, which is not a Gen 1 Pokemon. And I like Celebi a lot because
Celebi is a spring onion.
it's an onion poke. It's a fairy onion. I love it. I like Celebi a lot because it's it for some reason when I was younger and really into Pokemon, Mew didn't really appeal to me. So Celebi kind of filled that hole as like the extra mystery Pokemon that to me was a lot cooler than Mew was.
If these two are going to try to take down Celebi, I'll tag team with you because Celebi is on my honorable mentions list.
Honorable mentions.
I have a list of like 7 honorable mentions. I don't know what that is supposed to be.
Happening.
That's the noise Celebi makes.
Do you think I actually watched those movies?
That's the noise Celebi makes when we cut it from this list. My next one is Lotad.
Says the guy with Lotad.
Out of town and out of this Skype call.
Lotad is just.
I wonder what's gonna be struck first.
Unforgivable.
Lotad is incredible.
I mean, Platypi are cute.
No, wait. I need to hear the reason for this.
Platypi are legit.
I'm not giving you the reason unless we're cutting it. So Travis, you're number 4.
I see how the strategy is forming, not showing any of your defenses unless you need them. So I'm gonna follow suit, and I'm simply going to say Gourgeist, one of 3 Gen 6 Pokemon on my list.
All right. Gourgeist is the pumpkin Pokemon for those who had to think about that for a second.
Everyone knows Gourgeist because Gourgeist is great. It comes. I'm not going to. I was about to just jump into my defenses because you
already triggering that. Will, you're number 4.
So my number 4 is also obvious to anybody who's known me for a long time and heard me talk about it, but definitely Volcarona has to be on there. That is my all-star firebug. It helps me to hatch eggs quickly. It helps me on any time I do a playthrough. I always make sure that I get a Volcarona up on there.
And it helps when you need a 3rd fire Pokemon for your list.
I need only fire Pokemon.
What just happened to Will?
I don't know. You guys cut out for a minute there.
Oh, you cut out for us. It just said, I need a new fire Pokemon. I was going to have you repeat it and cut and edit that, but no, that's gold.
The reason you have so many fire-type Pokemon is because you're possessed by a fiend from the underworld who's like, burn it all.
The reason I have so many fire Pokemon is because I am straight fire, so whatever.
Will is lit. Micah, your 4th Pokemon.
All right, number 4 is Tyranitar, which is a shoo-in for any top 10 list. Purely because it's pretty much the Godzilla Pokemon. That's it.
All right, that's actually a real good defense off the bat. My 5th Pokemon is Ducklet. No response from anyone.
Ducklet's cool, I guess.
all right.
I used to know a kid at League who used to like collect every Ducklet card. He was like obsessed with Ducklet. So
Travis, your 5th Pokemon?
My favorite Pokemon of all time, and I don't think unless something drastic changes in future gens, which I don't think. I bet this will forever be my favorite Pokemon. Nothing will dethrone its beauty and glory, Piloswine. It's not pronounced Piloswine. If you say Piloswine, because Pylos, the prefix Pylos indicates hairy. So if any of you out there have ever said Piloswine because it's like a pillow because it's soft, you can just
the heat in your voice
everything you're doing
is rivaling Will's list right now.
There's some defense here.
Yeah, it seems very icy, doesn't it?
It's the second of 2 ice-type Pokemon.
I mean, Honchkrow's pretty ice because he's straight gangsta.
So
I don't see that connection. But
all right.
I don't see the connection between gangster and ice. But go ahead.
Like they
ice
get
cold.
Ice cold, or they get the ice. Or
Yeah,
they,
but
Ice?
no,
Is that a thing that gangsters say?
yeah,
diamonds.
we're gonna like diamonds.
Okay, ice him.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
we need to get that ice, aka the
I've
diamonds.
never heard that.
No,
What do
yeah,
you watch?
diamonds are called ice.
Okay.
Yeah, come on.
I mean,
Will and I go
I just
way
call them
back.
diamonds.
Will and I go way back with our robberies.
Yeah, well, you got to do what you got to do at times. What type do you guys think my next Pokemon choice is going to include?
Probably fire.
It's gonna be
Okay. No, Steve said fire, so let's make it Talonflame. I love Talonflame.
Dang, I didn't see that coming. Okay.
I have a Talonflame called I have literally have a Talonflame in every single game I have played since Talonflame came out. Absolutely.
Will had a Talonflame back in Gen 1.
I did not. But I have one called Vortex that is my special baby who I love, and I will take Vortex with me everywhere.
Add it to the list. Micah, you're number 5.
Shedinja. That's it.
Strong choice, sir. Strong choice.
Ninja.
It's really rad. That's my argument.
All right. Okay. My number 6 is going to be Golduck. This is the
Shoo-in. Given.
This is a given. Everyone knows the story of me wasting my Master Ball in Generation 1 on Golduck.
I forgot about that already.
Golduck is just a Pokemon that's kind of stuck with me. I really enjoy it. I will probably defend it pretty hard if the cuts are coming. But Golduck is my number 6.
Next, we're going to go with the Pokemon that turned around my opinion on fairy type. Not changed my opinion on the necessity of a new type, but made me love the Pokemon that inhabited the new type, Slurpuff.
All right. Will, what do you got for number 6?
Are there any more fire types left for me to choose from? Well, I'll tell you this. Zoroark
He's
can
Mr.
learn...
Heat Miser.
No, Zoroark
He's
can
Mr.
learn...
103.
Zoroark can learn flamethrower, so Zoroark is on my list for being awesome.
All right. Okay.
We'll get to that.
I see where you're going with this. Micah, your number, were we on 6? Yeah, 6.
My number 6 is Garchomp. I hear the size, and I'm ready to fight him.
You said the second syllable of garbage kind of strangely.
Dude, you're such a bro.
I've got my paragraph ready. I've got my paragraph ready.
If you're gonna bring in garbage Pokemon, Micah, I'm gonna bring in the best. My number 7 is Garbodor. Because there's only room in the top 10 for one pile of trash, and it's gonna be mine.
Can we just stop and start cutting stuff now?
No.
I'm so upset.
We have like 15 more Pokemon to add to this disaster. Travis, you're up.
The only starter on my list, and the second Gen 6 Pokemon on my list, Froakie. Or third. The third and last Gen 6 Pokemon on my list, Froakie.
Froakie?
I can appreciate that choice.
I have
The first water ghost Pokemon?
I have
Froakie?
no horse in this race. Will, what's your number 6? No, 7.
The Pokemon that I most identify with in my heart and soul and spirit.
Flabebbers.
No.
Not on your list?
I certainly do not identify with a little floating flower baby as my heart and soul and spirit. No, that would be Kyurem, the ice dragon.
Oh, wow. That went in a different direction.
There is literally an emoji in our Slack community of Kyurem just so I can express my opinion.
I forgot I made that emoji.
So that's why you put a Kyurem on everything I say?
Yes.
I've never noticed that.
Really quick.
Micah, what is your number 8? 7.
Keeping with edgelord Pokemon, my number 7 is Giratina, and one of very few legendaries on here.
My number 8 is going to be Esper. I'm a big cat person. I feel like out of all the cat Pokemon we have, I feel Esper is the strongest that identifies with me and my love for cats.
Okay, so I was just realizing that Honchkrow is definitely a cut eventually because I didn't even know how to spell it right. Hold on.
Real good.
Perfect.
All right, now that has been rectified, we're going to go with the second and last Gen 1 Pokemon on my list, and that is the pre-evolution of a Pokemon that's already on this list, Psyduck.
All right, so here's another Pokemon that I've used in actual competitions, and I have used 3 times. I have bred or had bred for me 3 different of these for competitive play, and that would be Hydreigon.
We have like every pseudo legendary dragon on this list. Micah, what do we got? Let's add another pseudo legendary dragon to this list.
Well, this is officially, I think, the first duplicate, and my next pick is Chandelure.
Oh, okay. We should do something in the. Why don't you add that to your list, and then what I'll do is I'll add
like a tag to it.
Yeah.
I have some very intense arguments for Chandelure, so I feel like.
Well, maybe I have some very intense arguments for Chandelure too.
Good.
Cool. We have
At least
first.
We know one's gonna stay.
We have our first double. That's cool. My turn. My 9th Pokemon on the list is going to be Politoed. Gen 2, I think maybe my only Generation 2 Pokemon. I think Politoed I think is really cool because it's an extended family of the Poliwhirl line, and I think that's really cool that it has a split evolution. I would love more Pokemon to have a split evolution, but Politoed just is super unique and is actually one of the cooler frog Pokemon in the game. I got nothing against Froakie. When I think of frogs, Politoed is the first that comes to mind.
Too bad it's a toad.
All right. Fair argument. What's your 9th Pokemon, Travis?
This is a Pokemon that meant a lot to me when I was a younger person. Heracross.
Will, your number 9?
One of the first Pokemon that I fell in love with from Gen 5, and my absolute favorite Psychic type that's not Victini, because Victini is Psychic Fire, Reuniclus.
Reuniclus is also in my honorable mentions.
Micah, your number 9.
My number 9 is, I guess you could say, really over. It's really over with me. And is the face Pokemon of Gen 6. My number 9 is Hawlucha. If I can...
Really struggling with that keyboard there. All right, cool. My final Pokemon in my list might be a shocker for some, can be Omanyte. Our Lord and Savior, Lord Helix. Omanyte.
Yes, the meme Pokemon.
Omanyte is my number.
Pokedex. That's what its species identification is in the Pokedex.
I understand. That's gonna be my number 10.
My final Pokemon is it my only Gen 4? No, Honchkrow is also Gen 4. My other Gen 4 Pokemon that's on this list, Drifblim.
Interesting.
And now that you've seen my full list, you can see that my list is superior than all the other lists.
I'll read the entire list before we start the cuts. Will, your last Pokemon?
My last Pokemon. Boy, that's a hard slot to fill, but I think we're gonna go with Flabébé, the cutest little fairy on a flower you ever saw. And it just floats around on its flower, and it's like Flabébé, Flabébé. It's so cute. That one.
All right. I really wish your mic would have cut out and done that like death fire talk you had before.
Flabébé.
Flabébé.
Micah, your final Pokemon on the list.
My final Pokemon I wrote twice as much about than everything else on my list, and that final Pokemon is Aegislash.
You realize we're supposed to be doing the top 10 Pokemon we like, not just the Smogon top OU tier list, right?
Let me tell you that I am terrible at competitive Pokemon. So
I also don't think people use Aegislash anymore, but I think it's like the bastion of Pokemon competitive play.
I've seen it used in doubles still.
Yeah, I think it's used in doubles.
I didn't know we were supposed to write paragraphs ahead of time. I
certainly did not.
I just prepared counter arguments, that's all.
Oh, so I see Micah the teacher's pet got additional help. Okay.
It's interesting that
I knew coming into this that my list would be the most targeted, so I prepared properly.
It's interesting that they call
strategy.
It's interesting that they call you Micah the Brave when you're showing a lot of cowardice right now about your picks.
So true. Have a little confidence, brother.
Oh, I'm ready.
Let me read the list here. We'll read the list, then we'll take a break, and then when we come back, we'll start the cutting. Start the brutal. This podcast has already been pretty brutal, but I'll start with my list here. Chandelure, Jirachi, Farfetch'd, Lotad, Ducklet, Golduck, Garbodor, Esper, Politoed, and Omanyte. Travis is sporting Honchkrow, Meowth, Vanilluxe, Gourgeist, Piloswine, Slurpuff, Froakie, Psyduck, Heracross, and Drifblim. Will is backed behind a Cyndaquil, a Chespin, a Victini, Volcarona, Talonflame, Zoroark, Kyurem, Hydreigon, Reuniclus, and Flabébé. And finally, Micah bringing up the rear here with Gengar, Eevee, Celebi, Tyranitar, Shedinja, Garchomp, Giratina, Duplicate Chandelure, Hawlucha, and Aegislash. And so that is our list. there's a video version, you'll be able to see that. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that or not. Still screen recording here. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will start cutting and defending Pokemon to whittle this list down to 10. And we're going to start backwards. So Micah will begin the cuts. Will, Travis, then me, and we'll full circle again until we get somewhat of a list. We will be right back. And we are back from our break to start cutting Pokemon from this list. We have 39 unique Pokemon. Chandelure is the only double on the list here between Micah and myself sharing that Pokemon. We're going to start cutting. And what's going to happen is we're going to start with Micah, move to Will, then Travis, then myself. Micah, out of these Pokemon, are going to nominate a Pokemon to get cut. He's going to give a reason why it should be cut or why it probably wouldn't make it to the top 10. That person, if it's Travis, for example, and if it's Vanilluxe, I'm only using this example because that's what I used earlier. Travis would attempt to defend and keep it on the list. If the rest of us agree that it was a pretty good defense, that Pokemon will become italicized. Again, if this is an audio version, we're just italicizing it for our benefit. If Travis believes that, okay, I can defend it, but even if I do defend it and keep it on the list a little longer, it's probably still not going to make it to the top 10. We're going to strike it out, which means it's eliminated from the conversation moving forward. We're going to try to whittle down these 39 Pokemon to get to a top 10 list, to get to 10 Pokemon to form a top 10 list. Does that make sense?
How do we determine if someone's defense has been sufficient enough to prevent it from being stricken from the record?
I think one other person, there's 4 of us. So if it was Micah asking for Vanilluxe to get cut, you defending it, you would just need Will or myself to agree with you to keep it.
And what if I want to upvote somebody else's rather than attacking somebody else's?
That's what we call cooperation and friendliness, and that is not accepted in this arena.
Aww.
If there is a situation where both Will and Micah feel strongly about cutting Vanilluxe, well, if it's 3 versus 1 on a topic, I don't think there's going to be a defense that's going to save it. I think, is that fair to everyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless it's a super good defense. Unless it's like the best defense.
We'll still hear the defense, but it's probably not going to, like, if you hear the defense and then you might be able to change someone's mind. So maybe there's
correct.
that.
Yeah. And if it's a 2v2, we can italicize it, but that's also sounding like it's probably not going to make it to the final 10. I just don't want anyone to be like, well, everyone's gaining up on my Pokemon. So that's why the italicize exists of like, no, let's keep it on the list a little longer. Because, yeah, what Travis said is there's the possibility to change. So right now we're trying to just trim the fat here. Let's discuss things. Let's hash things out. Micah, you get the pleasure of the first cut. Which Pokemon do you think is not top 10 material on this list?
I'm going straight for Lotad. I don't see any redeemable qualities for this Pokemon other than that it is so ironically terrible.
Terrible?
You know what? I would even add to that the worst thing, the worst thing about Lotad is it's not even Ludicolo. Like, Ludicolo would have a chance out there. Lotad?
You didn't even go for the best of that tree.
Ludicolo is great. Let me get a defense here.
I need to pull up a picture of those hands.
No, I understand Ludicolo. I knew what I was doing when I made this list. Lotad is like a little duck head. He has like this little beak. He's real cute looking.
It's too, and there just aren't any other ducks on your list, so you needed some representation.
And he's more like a platypus. He's not even a duck.
Can there be a duck type?
Platypuses are under the duck family.
Platypuses are not under the
They both
duck
have
family.
like
They're monotremes.
They're very notably not ducks. They're noted for being mammals that like lay eggs or something.
Ducks lay eggs,
and they also
have venom
poison.
and poison.
Yeah.
And they're not ducks. Those are the things they're known for.
Lotad can like hide in the water because it looks like a lily pad, but he's actually underneath it. He's like the crocodile of cuteness.
All right, and I'll even take a step back from that because he's more of a lotus.
Also, the crocodile of cuteness is Sandile. QED. I don't actually know what QED stands for, and I have a philosophy degree.
And I think it's actually QED, the crocodile of cuteness is Sandile, because it means like the result is.
Got it.
I will take the defeat of Lotad. I have struck him out, him or her, depending on your gender of Pokemon.
Rest in peace, Lotad.
Lotad's really cute.
The first tombstone.
Lotad's great. Also, Micah, I'm going straight for your throat when it's my turn.
Dang.
Will, what would you like to cut?
Oh, this is hard. I mean, there are a lot of good choices out here. A lot of things, and I am a multi Pokemon affectionator, but I think
not for Lotad.
Yeah, well, and I think my obvious, if like as my choice to cut, old Croaky's got to go. That, you know, it was the worst of the starters from Gen 6. He's the only starter I didn't use in my 2 playthroughs of the game. And he's just a pile of garbage and needs to go.
You're talking about Garbodor, right?
No, Croaky, and he's right next to Garbodor. You notice how convenient that is on the list. See how it goes, Garbage-Chomp, Garbodor, Croaky.
My defense for Froakie is that he fits into a category of Pokemon that I very much like, which is the type of Pokemon that is cute because it seems sort of oblivious in a way. And the Gen 6 starters, and starters generally, I think, desperately needed a Pokemon that was cute in that way. Generally, starters are just cute things, especially the first evolution of them. They're traditionally cute. They don't have weird shapes in them. They're nice little circles generally, or they're sort of like bipedal creatures that are cute in their own way. Froakie is one of the first.
You mean like Chespin? Oh yeah.
Yeah, Chespin's cute, but not as good as Froakie. Froakie is good because of those because its eyes that sort of pop out make a very strong silhouette.
Yeah, its eyes pop out and it gurgles bubbles from its mouth and like wears them as ornamentation.
I would use that as evidence that this is a great Pokemon because that detail sticks in your brain. It's not so it is whether you think that detail is interesting or not. The fact that detail is still relevant to you means that this Pokemon is still relevant to the list.
The fact that detail is still relevant to me is because I'm the only person here that watches the cartoon every week. And that is compounded in my brain because I see Froakie and his evolution every week, you know, because the company chose him to be Ash's best buddy, whatever.
Let me step in between you two real quick here. Will, you do watch the anime a lot. What kind of character... I just want to see where my alliance goes between the two. What kind of character was Froakie in the anime? Was he like a side duck? Is he like a Charizard? I'm just referencing Ash's strongest Pokemon personality types, like or Misty's. Where does he fit? Is he clumsy? Is he?
No. Just so you can understand the path of the Croaky arc in the cartoon, he is literally a Pokemon that Professor Sycamore gave to numerous people as their starter Pokemon, and then he was like, oh, you're not good enough for me, so I'm leaving. I'm walking away from my trainer, and I'm going to go back to Professor Sycamore. And then finally, like, Ash is the one that he was like, oh, I guess you'll be cool, and you can be my trainer because, of course, you're the chosen one, whatever. So he's kind of not nice.
He's kind of like a really condensed Pikachu story arc.
So it sounds like it does have an interesting arc to it in that this is a Pokemon that started out stubborn and had to be taught how to love by meeting a nice human being.
It didn't have to. He just decided because he saw Ash's actions. But he was mean to all those previous children who didn't live up to his standards because
then he learned from Ash's enthusiasm, his ability to execute what he wants, and his constant cheerfulness that some people aren't bad. So it's an interesting character arc.
And Croaky,
what that tells me
wait. And Croaky is so fantastic that he's like one of the 3 of Ash's Pokemon that was ever allowed to fully evolve to its final form. Yeah, that's how great Croaky is.
You're arguing
he sounds like
for me now.
He sounds like Charmander.
No, I'm arguing for Greninja.
I mean, what you're telling me is that Froakie had enough insight to realize how terrible all those other children were.
We can't argue this much for each one. Where Micah and Steve, where do you stand?
I can see him staying on the list for now.
I'm on either side of the fence, honestly.
So there's at least one person defending me, so he only gets an italic.
All right, he's italicized. He's still on the list. Our only cut is Lotad. Travis, who are you cutting? Who are you nominating?
This might not be a fan favorite call out, but I'm going to call for a strike on Eevee. The reason here, Eevee is a cute Pokemon, sure. The reason we like Eevee, though, is not because of what Eevee is, but it's because of what Eevee has the potential to be. Eevee in and of itself is nothing, right? So when we isolate Eevee from its evolutions and we're trying to pick a Pokemon that fits on a top 10 list, Eevee doesn't make sense because Eevee is only interesting because you as the owner of Eevee have the choice to turn it into, what is it, that are there 10 now evolutions? So when we're talking about
8.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
So the interesting thing about Eevee is that it is part of this larger system that is the evolution system. And when we're just talking about finding the best Pokemon, taking one part of that system out and saying it is the best separates it from what actually makes it interesting, and it's no longer interesting.
I would argue not only for Eevee to stay on this list, but also in favor of Eevee being a starter Pokemon, that's what makes it so great. Because it's essentially the epitome of new beginnings, which is when you're starting your Pokemon journey, that's exactly what you're looking for. That's the epitome of the Pokemon journey. There are many paths in front of you with an Eevee, and you get to choose your own. And that's the whole point of the series. And I think that's what makes Eevee so great.
And I would argue that Eevee needs to go. If you had put Umbreon, you'd have my vote. But Eevee, no bueno.
But that's what's
Steve,
so
where
great
do you
about
stand?
Eevee is that we can all make our own decisions about what we want our Eevees to be. But in addition to that, Eevee is just adorable.
Eevee is adorable, yeah. But Eevee, none of us want Eevee. We want a specific Eevee evolution.
My point exactly.
And this is a list of people who have made decisions, not people who are anticipating future decisions to be made.
But the only way that you can get that future Pokemon is with an Eevee. And the only way that you can end your Pokemon journey is by beginning it.
Look,
I've read too much St. Thomas Aquinas to have any respect for potentiality.
And I think we've got enough votes against Eevee to put that big old slash through the E, the E, the V, the E, and the E.
I mean, if this was a BuzzFeed list, it would be Charizard, Rapidash, Ditto, Eevee, etc. Because they would use the argument that Eevee could be anything you want. And I think that's cool. But I also have a list of a lot of, like, I have Esper, I have Lotad, I have Ducklet, I have Pokemon that don't evolve. And like in Ducklet's case, Ducklet is a Pokemon I do not want to evolve because it is dramatically different, and I like that, but that's what makes Ducklet more special to me. When I look at Eevee, it's when can I get Eevee to evolve, and what can I get Eevee to evolve into? It's just what Travis said, it's just, and what BuzzFeed would say. Look at everything Eevee could evolve into because you don't want it.
And you know what? Eevee can't evolve into a ghost type, so it can't evolve into what I want it to evolve into. So.
If you look at my list, literally half of them are ghost Pokemon.
And yet Eevee is not, so.
Well, it is now, because that's 3 versus 1 on cutting.
Looks like my Eevee evolved into a coup. Thanks, guys.
Can we just get rid of all of Micah's Pokemon?
Who made that cut? Was that Travis nominated Eevee?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, this list is rough. I am going to opt to cut Reuniclus.
What?
I think Reuniclus is a cool Pokemon. The design is outstanding. It's really cool. To me, it strikes me a lot. It's too similar. This is my complaint. It's too similar to Alakazam, where, and I could be wrong, I'm not the biggest competitive battler, but it strikes me as a glass cannon. Could be wrong.
That hurts me so much. It's incorrect. Reuniclus is bulky.
Is it super bulky?
That's why it's got that coating around it. Yeah.
I thought you had to breed it specifically for that.
Nah.
Like you had to breed it more specifically to be bulky.
Let me pull up its base stats.
All right, we'll get the facts here.
For reference.
Can we compare it to Can we compare it to Alakazam real quick?
110 HP, 125 special attack. 110 HP, 75 defense, 85 special defense. So not as bulky as I thought, but the 110 HP is a lot of bulk compared to, and I'll pull up Alakazam in a second.
I feel like Alakazam's in the 70 and 80s too for defenses. But as Travis is looking that up, I was super actually surprised you added Reuniclus to the list. Not that, well, I like Reuniclus, not enough for my top 10, but I've never heard you talk about Reuniclus or
Reuniclus is on every one of my playthroughs ever since Reuniclus came out.
I guess out of all the Pokemon you are vocal about, Reuniclus is the one you are least vocal about on the list, and our list can't be your top 10 Pokemon. So,
yeah, it could be if you would stop going after my Pokemon.
It could be, but I think you would agree out of your 10, Reuniclus is probably the lowest on your list, or at least to me, the one you rarely mention, and you mention a couple of these Pokemon quite frequently.
If that is your criterion, I would agree with you there.
Alakazam and Reuniclus share the same special defense, but Alakazam only has 55 HP to Reuniclus' 110, okay. and Reuniclus has more defense as well. If that's the end of the arguments, I would side with Will here. Steve, you list that the design is great, and I agree. You listed it's a cool Pokemon, and I agree. If your only real argument is that it's not talked about that often, or Will specifically doesn't talk about it that often, I don't find that argument particularly compelling for why it should be taken off the list, especially since I think all of us agree that the design is great and the evolutionary line it's a part of is a cool design as well.
I agree, it's a cool design, but that doesn't.
I think all the Pokemon are cool.
Wait. For your Gen 5 Psychic type, do you want Reuniclus or do you want Gothorita?
Reuniclus is better, but like all these Pokemon are good. Like I could speak to how they all are designed well.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear anything after you just said Reuniclus is better. Okay,
absolutely. Like Reuniclus.
Vote of confidence. Thank you.
Then Gothorita, but that's not saying anything.
Right. That's like saying, what do you want, Reuniclus or Huntail? Like everyone's gonna pick Reuniclus. No one's gonna pick Huntail.
What would you rather have? This ice cream cone full of trash or this ice cream cone full of a pile of flesh?
All I heard just now was everyone's going to pick Reuniclus. So I just keep getting these votes in my favor. I don't even understand what this debate is about.
I do think that Reuniclus and its line are interesting designs, I do not consider it to be anywhere near notable enough to place it on a top 10 list of all the available Pokemon. I mean, especially in comparison to a lot of the stuff on this list.
Technically, it's a top 10 list of these 40.
That's true. But these 40 were already pre-cut prior to this. I can see Travis's argument with Froakie. I understand how important Froakie is to Travis. If you want to, you can't live and die on every single Pokemon on your list.
Oh, yes, I can.
Yeah, but we would be here for a long, long time, and I don't want to be here that long. I got
nothing better to do.
I've enjoyed what we've talked about up to this point. I could have lived and died on Lotad. Travis will probably live and die on Froakie. I picked Reuniclus because I feel it is the weakest on your list, and if you still want to stand by that, okay, we can italicize it, but I feel like you have better arguments for other Pokemon on your list.
I think that Travis and I both have a good feeling towards Reuniclus, and it needs to stay.
All right.
And you can just remove Froakie right now in its place. Thank you.
All right. Micah, your go.
Oh, God. I'm gonna go for Honchkrow.
The Honch can take it.
The Honch can take it. It's a neat looking Pokemon, and I agree with your argument that the gangster, the like 20s gangster style Pokemon needed to be represented in some fashion, and Honchkrow is a great example of that. However, I don't think that there are any more redeeming qualities other than what it's loosely based on, and that's about it.
I would go in before Travis gets a chance to defend. In the realm of this type of Pokemon, I'd rather go with a Mismagius than a Honchkrow.
Not even on the list.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. A Pokemon that's not on the list,
comparatively speaking,
yes, is even better than this one.
Okay, so in defense of Honchkrow, I will maintain what you've already conceded, that that its design and basis are great. I'll concede also that its design is cool, as you say, but I'll also add, you say that your main argument then is that beyond its coolness, there's not a lot for Honchkrow to go on. And I'll present just one. I think Honchkrow adds a lot to our understanding of the dark type, at least in the West, because in Japanese, the dark type translates it like the translation of dark type to English, as far as I understand it. From what I understand, in Japan, the dark type has more connotations of like trickery or mischief. At least that's my understanding of it. And I feel like Honchkrow is one of the Pokemon, and I feel like that gets translated to us. I think we get that between Weavile as another example, but I think Honchkrow even more shows that dark doesn't necessarily mean evil, which I think Weavile can kind of show in a lot of the other dark type Pokemon. You would just assume that there's more complexity to the dark type, that it means more things. And because Honchkrow is only a dark type Pokemon because it's based on crime, and it's based on that crime culture, that it shows us a lot more. It makes the dark type, its presence makes the dark type more interesting.
So, that's a fantastic argument, but it doesn't help me feel better about how trash Honchkrow is.
That's fine, strike it.
I mean, that
was a really great argument.
Yeah, it was a super good argument. It was better than Reuniclus's argument.
But there are a lot of dark type Pokemon, I feel like, that still do communicate that without Honchkrow being like the crutch that they all stand on.
I had to do something. I had to say something.
I mean, no, you're.
It's pretty great for like off the cuff.
If you didn't say earlier that a Honchkrow was your number 10 and would probably be cut earlier, I wouldn't have like struck out Honchkrow right now. But like your argument was good.
Well, thank you.
Will, who are you picking?
Oh, I gotta pick again. Boy, this is a tough choice because there's a lot of good Pokemon on here. I think, while I don't want to be too harmful, I think Vanilluxe is incredibly idiosyncratic to Travis's enjoyment of ice types. And I think if you have to pick one ice type from this list, Kyurem is obviously the superior choice. So I just think I can understand that, Travis enjoys Vanilluxe. And even, in my playthrough of Pokemon Y, I bought the Vanillite shirt for my character so that he could wear that around, and I thought that was cute. But cute does not win battles, and actually, I do have a fondness for Vanilluxe as well, because of the Pokemon Podcast playmat that I still use when I play TCGs. But that still ain't gonna do it. Gotta go.
You just activated my trap card.
Before Travis,
I feel like this is the first really personal throat grab.
Before Travis defends, I will say that I can see Vanilluxe being a final top 10 out of all of these Pokemon, and that's just me.
Really?
Yes.
I have two main defenses for Vanilluxe. First, Vanilluxe is great because it's one of, I believe, 7 or 10 or something. If you're counting different Pokemon within the same evolutionary line, I think it's 10. Pokemon designed by, what was his name? I don't remember his name, but he's the first Westerner. He's a British fellow, the first Westerner to design to do the official design for Pokemon. All of those were in of his first work, and the first work of Westerners were in Gen 5. His other work was like Garbodor, which is also on this list. And I feel like because of that, Vanilluxe represents the Pokemon's move towards it where it is now with a sort of international focus. I think that culminated in Gen 6 with the different languages, with Vivillon or Vivillon, the different forms of Vivillon depending on region. And I think Vanilluxe is where that starts, because you get designs from Westerners, and because it opens up the design space to ideas from other cultures, whether or not you can. I don't know the origins of ice cream, but I feel like Vanilluxe is part of a larger group of Pokemon that opens up the design space to not just Japanese culture things like the beckoning lucky cat, but also cultural ideas from all across the globe for people who live in those cultures to be able to have their own Pokemon represented in them. The second defense, and I think is the stronger defense, as if the first one wasn't already good enough already, is that Vanilluxe represents everything that is good that we defend from the Gen 1er criticism, right? The Gen 1ers say that after Gen 1, Pokemon had no good ideas anymore. That after Gen 1, Pokemon are just they're not based on animals anymore. So Vanilluxe flies in the face of that by doing just that. It's not based on an animal. It's based on a completely different kind of object. It's bold in the fact that it is a food Pokemon, and it's also a cheerful, happy, beautifully designed, I think, Pokemon that says, I don't care if your argument is that Gen 1 was better because everything was darker or scarier. Vanilluxe represents the move towards aiming. It says this game is for children. Vanilluxe is a Pokemon that kids would love. It's happy, it's smiling, it's got the whole weird two-face thing that's a little interesting. So I feel like Vanilluxe is one of the Pokemon that's not necessarily for people our age. Vanilluxe is one of the Pokemon wherein Game Freak is saying this is for kids. The sort of harsh critics of Gen 1 aren't the target audience, and you shouldn't be entitled to think so. I think that's also what Vanilluxe represents.
That was my first immediate thought when thinking about whether or not to support or defend Vanilluxe, is that argument specifically. And I think it was either on Twitter or in an episode of the podcast when they had announced Vanilluxe, or whenever it was, I saw or I listened to or read you arguing that point, and it was a really good point to me, not just because it flies in the face of, on its own, what Gen 1ers say about Pokemon past Gen 1, but also because it draws a lot of attention to the fact that Gen 1, a lot of it was exactly what they were arguing the rest of the series is about, and what the designs come from. Because if you look at Gen 1, a lot of it is exactly that. It's like Geodude is a rock with arms, and I mean, there's plenty of Pokemon in Gen 1 that are literally just things that they gave some kind of character to, and then it was a Pokemon. And I think that Vanilluxe did a really good job of presenting that argument and also kind of shutting it down.
I mean, I don't know what Will has to say, because he was the one that nominated this, but I would be willing to bold Vanilluxe right now and move that Pokemon into the final top 10.
You guys have so completely bored me to death with your argumentation. Whatever.
It's very close to Travis. This is important.
I mean, if Vanilluxe is down there on the top 10, don't expect me to sign this Declaration of Independence.
I mean, look, we have spent 31 minutes arguing 5 Pokemon, so like you have to make sacrifices to make this list work if you're going to defend. Like I crossed out Lotad pretty quickly. And
all right, just make it clear, right? It's on the record that I did not support Vanilluxe, but 3 dudes did,
I'm
and
sure
there's 4 dudes here.
There are going to be plenty of Pokemon on the final list that I don't care about.
Right.
Like, yeah.
If you look at the progress bar on your podcast listening app, it probably says that we're only a third of the way through the episode.
No, one quarter.
I'm looking at my list, and I'm looking at 3. I'm looking at 2 to 3 that I want to make sure gets to that list. And I look at other people's lists, and I look at Vanilluxe, and I go, Vanilluxe is a Pokemon that I 100% support to go on that final list. My argument with Nicholas earlier is like I think you, Will, should be looking at 2 to 3 Pokemon that you think that you will.
Hey!
I'm just saying
this is
that
not your board game, buddy. Don't tell me my strategy. I know I know my win condition. You don't have to tell me how I'm going to win.
You need to save some of this intensity for Gen Con.
And you can save all of your justifications. Move the Vanilluxe down. I've issued my protest. My black card is on the table. We can move forward.
Vanilluxe is bold.
Can I make a challenge? It is my turn, right?
It is your turn, yes.
At the risk of fanning the flames even more, I'm going to challenge Kyurem.
Kyurem?
Oh, boy. Ooh.
Wait a minute.
I would argue that Kyurem is the mirror image to what makes Vanilluxe great. Because Kyurem, while Vanilluxe is evidence against Gen 1ers, right? Vanilluxe says, we can make great Pokemon that aren't based on animals. It says we can make great Pokemon that aren't in Gen 1. I think Kyurem represents some of the validity within Gen 1 argumentation, namely that as the games went on, Pokemon got too complicated. That's an argument that I buy. I think it makes it worse for kids, the main target audience. The fact that you combine these 2 Pokemon with a DNA splicer and you end up with 2 different forms of Kyurem, or 3 if you count its base form, that doesn't feel like the spirit of the game. That feels like a different franchise altogether. Kyurem, additionally, I feel like is not even the best of it. I would argue is the worst of its trio. I think Reshiram and Zekrom have a sort of majesty to them, a sort of elegance to them that Kyurem completely lacks. Partially, I would suppose because it's literally supposed to be a husk, but I think that's even more evidence that this
incorrect.
Pokemon is uninspired.
Incorrect. Kyurem is a strange and beautiful creature. There was once a unified dragon that crashed to Earth, and in the crashing split into 2 creatures. Kyurem is the void, the emptiness between
the husk
2.
that's left over from when the original dragon.
Not the external shell, but the internal.
Well, but I wasn't saying husk literally. I understand the lore.
Strangely, that's the word you used, which was husk. And Kyurem represents the void, the emptiness.
And what is a husk? Empty, void.
No, husk is a shell.
I know how the Pokemon works.
I think the story of Kyurem is beautiful. It is intriguing. It is unresolved, and it just presents a mystery in the Pokemon universe that still has not been answered. Probably never will be, and it's something to ponder and think about, and is wonderful.
For the sake of time, I'll just let my arguments speak for themselves.
My opinion on Kyurem is that I initially was very against it because Black and White and Black 2 and White 2 are easily my least favorite of the series.
I agree.
However, I didn't know enough about Kyurem, and I still don't, because I never completed Black 2 and White 2, and I do actually really like that story. However, that's not enough for me to argue for it, so I'm kind of on I can't say one way or another.
Kyurem is really cool because it's asymmetrical. It's not a uniform Pokemon like others, but even Kyurem could not save my boredom that was Black and White 2.
Oh.
And I think that's 3 versus 1 against Kyurem, which is
technically
2.5, but whatever.
And a sit out.
And an abstain.
You can't abstain from everything, Micah.
If I got no opinion on it one way or another.
He doesn't even understand the story of Kyurem, so he's an uneducated vote. I'd rather not even have.
Give
him the slice. Slice it out.
We're cutting?
I said that I thought it was interesting. I like it. I like your version of the story, and it actually has me interested to learn more about it.
Give it the cut. He doesn't know enough. I don't want an uninformed voter making decisions for our populace.
All right. Travis, you voted for Kyurem, right?
Correct.
I will. I'm not meaning to attack you, Micah, but
it's fine. Come at me.
Celebi really sucks.
Oh my god.
I'm going to say right now you have to have a very good argument because I love Celebi.
Oh my god. All right. Celebi has, first off, one of the weakest movies out of the 200 plus Pokemon movies that exist.
I will agree with that right off the bat before you continue. And I had not seen it until this last summer or whenever it was that they did the Twitch Watches Pokemon, and they aired like a bunch of movies. And it was really difficult for me to sit through that. However, I have pretty much no knowledge of the show beyond Kanto. And so that did not factor into my argument for Celebi at all.
All right. We have 3 mythical Pokemon on this list. We have Jirachi, we have Victini, we have Celebi. We're only missing Mew and Manaphy, and those 4 Pokemon are all better than Celebi in every way.
In how? Because I disagree. Give me other than the movie is bad, tell me why Celebi isn't good.
Like Celebi
and I might.
Okay, Celebi's the time travel Pokemon. It can go back and forth through time. We've seen that is its unique ability, but we also see that other Pokemon have the ability to do that. Giratina, Palkia, Dialga, I can never say that dragon's name, but you know what I'm talking about. They all have the abilities to go through time in some extent. Maybe not as quickly as Celebi, but they all have time travel. Like Victini has Victini, though, has a lot going.
Celebi has the ability to not only time travel, but to exist at any given point in time that it travels to. Therefore, Celebi is literally its own time paradox, which is amazing to me because it takes this Pokemon that's cute and adorable, and it's supposed to be something that kids just are really excited about, and then it has this way deeper story that lets adults enjoy it just as much.
But would you, like, if you were in the Pokemon universe and this argument's getting real weird, and you see a Celebi, the Celebi can do the time paradox thing. Is that exciting to you, knowing it can do its own thing that probably will or will not involve you? Or when you see a Victini, you know that a Victini brings both victory and luck, and that directly affects you. Now, if you look at Jirachi, you know Jirachi grants wishes. So if I was a little kid and Pokemon were real, Celebi's the last mythical Pokemon I want to see because Celebi is selfish. Victini and Jirachi both work for the kids.
Celebi is far from selfish because Celebi's main goal is to show up and bring peace and to revitalize the world for everyone.
Yeah, and you've seen every one of those Pokemon movies. Everything bad happens. Where's Celebi? Nowhere, except the 4th movie and maybe another movie.
It only shows up when peace is present.
It didn't save Ash from crying in every single movie.
Good. I would argue that that's a benefit to Celebi.
I think I don't know where Will stands, but I think I'm okay with striking it because of this idea of comparing it to the other mythicals, not in terms of its design. I still would say that Celebi, I think, is the best designed visually. I think it's the most aesthetically interesting of the mythicals, but this argument that, you know, what makes them, I don't think that I shouldn't say mythical because other Pokemon would qualify in that sense. I think of the Mew analogs, all of those are valued based on, you know, what's interesting about them is what they bring with them. They're sort of these strange pixie-like creatures that appear in and out of your existence and have a profound effect when they get there. And time travel is doesn't fit with that, and thus is sort of the least successful in that endeavor. So even though I like Celebi, I'm not. I'm taken by your argument
on one specific thing that I immediately rebut by removing Jirachi from the list.
Wait. Before you do that, we haven't had Will. Like, if Will's not defending Celebi, Celebi's just getting cut.
I enjoy Celebi as the forest guardian, and certainly in the Generation 2 games and the Generation 4 games being a more accessible mythical Pokemon to understand as part of the game, but not enough to keep him on the list. Gotta go.
That's 3 versus...
As much as I argued for it, I am not heartbroken over Celebi. I love Celebi, but you make good points.
It is your vote, though. It is your choice for elimination. And are you going straight for Jirachi?
I am going straight for Jirachi only because I find Jirachi to be the least interesting of the mythical Pokemon. I find it to be not only the least interesting, but also the most cliche. That it is a Pokemon that grants wishes.
Can we tag team on this?
incredibly idealist and not reasonable, and I hate it.
Can we tag team on this?
Go right ahead. Let's
Yeah, you can start, Travis.
If you have ever played against a Jirachi competitively, you know that Jirachi is the most annoying little piece of garbage that has ever been in any Pokemon game. Serene Grace and Ironhead should not be allowed. So it is somehow more annoying than Togekiss, even though they have the exact same strategy. The Thunder Wave, Serene Grace, Ironhead, you're never going to get your move off because you're always going to flinch and Thunder Wave. Jirachi represents all the bad things about competitive Pokemon. All of these luck-based checks. The only thing worse is if it somehow got critical hits more. It represents so many of the things that are wrong with competitive Pokemon. It would be very difficult for me to put it on a top 10 list when I abhor how it actually plays in the actual game, which I would argue is an important factor for making a top 10 list like this.
I have no fondness one way or the other when it comes to Jirachi, but I will mention that there are frequently special Jirachi distributions in Japan to celebrate specific events because Jirachi is very reflective of something in Japanese culture tied to meteor showers that we do not have in our English-speaking culture. And it has been extremely difficult for people to get a Jirachi in especially newer players, and therefore I find Jirachi to be incredibly uninteresting, and he can go.
When Travis said
Steve hasn't given a defense,
let's tag team this, he kind of just threw Jirachi under the bus instead of like defending Jirachi.
That's what I was saying. I'm tag teaming with Micah.
Oh, I see. There are other Pokemon I would rather fight for, but I think if in the Pokemon lore, I think Jirachi really stands out as a Pokemon that you would actually want to see and experience. There are a lot of...
I would want to see and experience literally every Pokemon. I want every Pokemon to be real. My dream would be... Actually, if Jirachi is pointless because my only wish that would ever matter to me is I wish Pokemon were real, and if Jirachi were there, it would kind of be pointless because my wish has already been granted.
And you know what's unfortunate? Because I know this is going to fall on deaf ears in this particular crowd, but if anybody has watched Madoka, you would understand that Jirachi is actually Kyubey and is the villain of the story.
Okay, well, I already said I'm cutting Jirachi.
Villain?
Let me just give some defense for this poor Pokemon that's about to get cut. If Pokemon Go was real, if Pokemon was real in the lore, if you could be around all these Pokemon, and we bring that down to mythical and legendary Pokemon, and you see something like a Reshiram or a Zekrom or a Raikou or an Entei in the wild, yes, that should be a rare and one in a lifetime experience. But those Pokemon don't really do anything for you. If you were to see a Jirachi or even a Victini in the wild, you would get some sort of benefit besides just experiencing a one in a lifetime happening. So if you were in a competition, if you were competing, if you were doing something that needed luck/victory, and you saw a Victini
I'm falling asleep
in the lore, like that would be the best thing you could possibly experience.
Yeah,
at
sure.
That point.
Getting wishes granted is cool. Like, great.
But
Cross
it's
it
not
off.
realistic.
None of this is realistic. It's Pokemon.
There are also
If
three.
I
there are also
had a
three gym
Jirachi in
Pokemon.
front of me, if I had a Jirachi in front of me and it asked me to give it a wish, my wish would be for Celebi. But we can't have everything we want.
You can't say that's not realistic. That's what the Pokemon. This is a stupid conversation about Pokemon.
I'm just being a pessimist, all right?
I'm just not really taken by the argument that like it's granting wishes makes it like. I don't really think that this is a list of top 10 Pokemon we want to meet in real life. This is like top 10 Pokemon that within the franchise, and I think those are two different lists. And so I'm not
my
really
argument would be
argument.
like Jirachi definitely stands out of 700 Pokemon, but that's because of the points I made. But that's fine. I've already crossed them out. Will's turn.
Just following on from your argument about standing out in 722 Pokemon, I think Slurpuff, while it is cute and it is sort of iconic within Generation 6, representing the food and the Pokepuffs and everything, it's not even notable as a fairy type. There are other fairy types that are much more that you can identify much more clearly with being representative of the type. And I just think Slurpuff, while it's cute and nice, does not quite merit being on this list.
I think Slurpuff I'll start that sentence in a different way. I think there are certain Pokemon that go very far in terms of defining the aesthetic of a given generation. I think lately, I don't think it's necessarily the case with the first 2 generations, but I think Generation 3 onward, there's a subtle but consistent design theme around all of the Pokemon within a generation. I feel like Generation 5 is a very sunny, round generation in terms of its Pokemon, and I feel like Slurpuff is one of those Pokemon for Gen 6. Gen 6 is a very colorful, it's vibrant, it's bouncy, it's because it's the first Pokemon in 3D, it has a lot of depth, and it benefits from not having sprites, and I feel like all of those traits also apply to Slurpuff very well. So in that sense, I think Slurpuff represents a lot of what is good and consistent about Generation 6. What else was I gonna say? And the idea that it's not notable as a fairy type, I would take issue with. You didn't really provide a lot of warrants behind that claim. You just said it's not notable. I would argue it is notable. It's one of the few Pokemon actually introduced as a fairy type, along with stuff like Aromatisse and Flabebe's line, like Florges and stuff. It's one of the few introduced fairy type Pokemon, and I feel like that in itself makes it a notable.
If you line up Slurpuff, Spritzee, Florges, Sylveon in a row and ask anyone, can you point out which is the most fairy type? Slurpuff is going to end up last on that list.
I mean, I don't know if that's a strong argument, but I like Slurpuff, but I don't see Slurpuff making it to the top 10.
We've already got one food Pokemon on the top 10. How many delicious meals?
I mean, I like Slurpuff a lot, but I can't.
When we're done with this list, I can't use it to make a meal for your significant other or for yourself, and then take pictures of it and post it.
Does that mean you don't like it either, Micah, for the top 10?
This is what I'm going to do going forward. If I am no two ways about a specific Pokemon, I'm going to count it as a strike. I generally don't have an interest in Slurpuff. It's neat and it's cute, but I agree with Steve that I don't see it making the top 10 because it's just not as interesting to me as a lot of the stuff on this list.
Strike it.
It's been struck. It's been struck. What we'll do here is we're going to take a break. Before the break here, Jirachi, Lotad, Honchkrow, Slurpuff, Kyurem, Eevee, and Celebi have all been cut. Vanilluxe is the only Pokemon that's made it to the top 10. We probably have to accelerate this in some aspect.
We have 32 remaining.
So we'll probably have to do something to accelerate this a bit. But we'll figure that out after our break. And hopefully we can wrap this up in another less than an hour, hopefully. So we will be right back. And we are back from our break. We are still cutting and editing Pokemon. I can't remember who nominated last. I think Will did, right? Nominated
yes, sir.
Slurpuff.
That's me then, huh?
Yeah, it's Travis. We could switch it up, maybe. Well, let's go through Travis's and I's cuts, and let's do a round of Pokemon we want to see on the top 10 list without picking our own. Does that make sense?
So am I picking one to cut, or am I picking one that I want on the top 10?
We'll do cut and me cut.
Okay.
So that's fair for cuts. And then we'll do Micah, and Micah would nominate a Pokemon he'd want to see on the top 10, but he can't pick from his own list. So we'll try that route just to kind of differentiate the list a little bit. and accelerate this process.
All right, Will's list is looking the healthiest, so I'll attack Will again. I feel like that's all I've done, but I'll hit Will again. We're going for Zoroark.
What? Are you serious?
I'm 100% on board with this.
I'm very serious. Zoroark is notable for only 2 reasons. Reason 1, it has a unique ability that's very tricky and makes for interesting gameplay. I'll concede that. It's notable, second, because it is the Lucario of its generation. Lucario is the worst Pokemon, bar none. If this is trying to be Lucario, then it's and the fact that it's trying to achieve complete garbage trash and not making it means it's probably the worst Pokemon of all the 40 on this list.
I have no idea why anyone says it's the Lucario of its generation. I don't even know what that means.
I think what I have to agree with Travis. I think Pokemon companies saw the success in Lucario, and they tried to apply that same marketing strategy to Zoroark, and it didn't really work.
What did I miss in the marketing strategy? Because all I know is, yes, it has an extremely unique ability that no other Pokemon has ever replicated ever. And in the first Black and White games, which you guys may not have realized, the only way to get Zoroark was to have the distribution legendary dogs. And if you didn't have them, you didn't get no Zoroark unless you had a friend who could get one, breed it, and give one to you. Zoroark is extremely special, and it's just an amazing and beautiful creature.
I don't think that's true. Didn't you get a Zorua through the game? Didn't like an NPC give you a Zorua?
Nope, not until Black and White 2.
I mean, Lucario was the first non-legendary, non-mythical Pokemon to be featured on a cover, if I'm not mistaken, of a movie, and Zoroark was the second.
I mean, that's fine. All 3 of you hate on Zoroark. You can take it from the list, but I just think that's really you're really missing out.
I think Steve said something that resonates with why I don't like Zoroark that much, and that it feels more like a marketing ploy than it feels like a Pokemon, because Lucario was extremely successful, and they tried for a similarly edgy and yet not evil design that's a 2-stage evolution that starts with something small and cute and evolves into something that seems threatening but also sort of agile and anthropomorphic brooding animal. I
don't understand why
it feels exactly like a marketing strategy and less like a Pokemon.
I don't understand why you're visiting your hate for some other Pokemon on poor Zoroark, who is a glorious and wonderful creature that I have
used. It's a shadow of an even worse Pokemon.
Oh,
I mean,
Lord.
Look, all of these Pokemon are great, but we gotta be cutthroat to
take it. You guys, it's 3 against 1. Take it.
To get
Lucario
to 10.
and Zoroark are the hot topic of Pokemon.
I will chop out your tongue and make you swallow it. Gen Con 2 weeks away.
Let's go.
There's a lot of Pokemon on Micah's list that I don't really like, but I don't see Drifloon making the top 10. I think Drifloon's really cool. Obviously not based on an animal, but based on a balloon. I think the lore behind Drifloon is really cool and creepy, and I'm all for creepy Pokemon. Just look at Chandelure. But I just don't see top 10 material in Drifloon. I'd be curious what your counter argument is, but I don't think it would convince me to keep it on this list.
I think that with ghost types, what draws us to them is the fact that they are sort of these strange siren calls, that they are gorgeous to look at, but deadly to interact with. Drifloon is a great example of that. It is probably the most friendly looking ghost type Pokemon, and that makes me, and I would assume other people, love it at first sight. And then the fact that you learn that that it finds people and lifts them to, and the fact that it only rises and never sinks once it grabs people, that presumably it drops them to their death. That the juxtaposition of allure and mortality that we love in ghost type Pokemon is perhaps best exemplified in Drifloon.
I love Drifloon quite a bit. I love having a Drifloon with Ominous Wind, but I don't think Drifblim needs to make the cut.
You would cut it, or
I would cut it.
Oh, okay. Micah?
I agree.
Okay.
I was really interested in Drifblim when you first encounter it, but I'm not. It's nothing that really stands out to me as a top 10 quality Pokemon.
Okay. Drifblim is cut. Micah, is there a Pokemon on the list that you would like to see go into the top 10? I guess if there's not enough votes from everyone else, it would have to be, let's use underline to signify the almost everyone agrees.
I would argue okay. This is going to be tough for me because I hate to hand this to you, but I know that this is going to be a discussion anyways, so we might as well have it now. I feel like I would be okay with Golduck making the list.
I 100% agree. Golduck is iconic for all of the work that we do, and I feel that Golduck should be on the list.
I feel like it's a flagship for the podcast, and that lends some quality to it to be on the top 10 list. In addition to that, my opinion of Golduck has changed significantly since I've hung out with you and experienced Pokemon with you, even in so that when I found a wild Golduck playing Pokemon Go, I got really excited. And then I was like, why am I excited? It's a Golduck. And I was like, oh yeah, Pokemon podcast.
That's awesome.
So I would be okay with it making the list.
Travis?
The only argument I would have against it is that I think Psyduck is cuter, but that means a lot less than the story that not only you shared on this show, but also the lore that builds around our show and around the Pokemon in my eyes. So I think all of us agree.
I think you guys sold Golduck better than I could. Golduck is on the list. All right.
Cross off Psyduck while we're at it, because we're not going to put both of them on there.
Okay. Will, is there a Pokemon on this that's not on your list that you would like to nominate to the top 10?
I would put Chandelure because I should have had Chandelure on my list. I forgot. Just when I saw you guys put it there, I remembered not only that beautiful painting that you did for 649 Monsters of Chandelure,
thank you,
but my great pleasure in using Chandelure in Pokken Tournament, and how much I enjoy the way that he drags people into that alternate dimension with the candles, and then he giggles as not people, but the other Pokemon, and then he giggles as they are tormented in that alternate hell dimension. And I love that about Chandelure, and it just gives him so much more credit. And he's so unique in his fire ghost typing, and he can be very difficult to handle in a VGC competition as well. I love me some Chandelure.
Obviously on Micah's list. Travis, where do you stand?
I like Chandelure. I don't love it as much as all of you, but it's in order to not have it be on the top 10, I would have to argue that one of you change your mind, and I don't think that's going to happen. And I also don't dislike Chandelure to the extent that I would really be able to come up with a lot of things to say about it.
All right.
I like Chandelure as a Pokemon. Put it up.
Solid.
Chandelure is on.
We've got three
on
the list.
Travis,
Progress.
what are you nominating not on your list?
I'm between two right now. I'm gonna go with Tyranitar.
Sandstream Tyranitar?
I don't care. I don't care what it's better than Unnerve.
So overused.
I would argue against Tyranitar.
So here's my argument for it. Generation 2 is extremely important to those of us who have stuck with the game through its entirety, right? Generation 2 is what separates people who just played Generation 1, were happy with that, and didn't like what followed. Those of us who continued to play, who played Generation 2 and loved it, are what a lot of the fan base, a lot of the adult fan base, what comprises a large portion of the adult fan base of this fandom, I guess, of this franchise. There's, we're getting to the point where people who were in like elementary school when Gen 3 came out are now like adults, and that's terrifying to me. But I think it's still safe to say that the majority of the adult fan base of Pokemon had Gen 2 as its sort of turning point, going from what was interesting to you as a kid to what was interesting to you as you grew up. And Tyranitar, I think, not only appears in the generation that is in that transition period, but it also balances to it being one of the sort of cool pseudo-legendary Pokemon that's good in competitive play, makes it appeal both to kids because it's this hard-to-achieve Pokemon that I know when I was a kid, I liked those pseudo-legendaries that were hard to evolve into because it felt like you had to be dedicated to this thing, and that was a new experience to me to level up a Pokemon that far. And I think it appeals to, as you grow older, and I mean, some of that to me has faded off as I'm an actual adult and I no longer find like edgelord Pokemon that interesting. But in that transition period, when I was in middle and high school, I thought the cool, strong Pokemon were very interesting, and Tyranitar exemplifies that a lot, I think.
Will, what's your stance on Tyranitar?
I just think that it's like so overused, so out there, just it's become kind of bland.
Yeah.
That
I agree. Like,
I mean, in a competitive
but even like Tyranitar's Mega Evolution like doesn't really benefit it in any way. It's kind of cool, but at the same time, it wasn't impactful like Lopunny's Mega Evolution. My
main argument for Tyranitar and why it's an important Pokemon to me is because I have, for the longest time since I was a kid, been a huge fan of Godzilla. Excluding, of course, Godzilla 2000, which is by far the worst pile of cinematic trash that has ever surfaced. Is that the one with Matthew Broderick or whatever? Yes, it is. Yep, yeah. It's the one where Godzilla is essentially just a T-Rex, and that's it. But Tyranitar is like it's like the closest Pokemon to Godzilla that exists. And to me, when growing up with Gen 1 and Gen 2 and everything, really resonated with me because I was so into Godzilla. And the Mega Evolution for Tyranitar is even more awesome to me because it borrows a lot from the construction of Mechagodzilla, which is also an important part of that franchise. On top of that, there's all kinds of really cool things about what it does and its, biology and things like that. Like it destroys mountains and lives in them and stuff like that. That I think helps build that Godzilla-like image for Tyranitar, and I think makes it a really awesome Pokemon.
Well, we got 2 against, unless Will changes his mind. 2 against, 2 for. So unless I'm not changing my mind on Tyranitar, so
that basically means it's struck, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's
majority.
I feel like it's not going to come back to.
You don't think so?
To it. I don't see anybody coming back to it to argue anything further than what we've already argued.
All right. Well, we will strike it then. I mean, Tyranitar is cool.
It breaks my heart, but I will accept.
I mean, I look at most Pokemon where like Mega Evolution is like here is your promotion. Here is for people to remember you. And when they did that Tyranitar, I was just like, okay, sure. Of course you got it. Good for you. But that's just me. Who nominated that?
Me.
So, okay. How sad is it that he went to promote it and it got destroyed?
No, that's all right. I
mean,
mean,
my argument was pretty good.
Yeah, I think so too.
It was good. I appreciate the effort.
I will nominate Hawlucha, actually, as a Pokemon that could make it to the top 10.
Yes.
Even before I got into wrestling, which was about 2 years ago now, when I played Generation 6, no joke, no exaggeration, because I didn't look at the Pokemon early. When I encountered Hawlucha outside of the second gym, if I'm not mistaken, on my way to the third gym, somebody's going to correct me and go, well, actually, Route 7 was over here, so you would have had 3 badges. But anyways, when I encountered Hawlucha, it brought back a rush of memories of Generation 1 and Generation 2 before the internet, before we saw all the Pokemon, and it was almost like that. I don't want to like that rush of Golduck of I have no clue what this is. I don't know if it's super rare. I don't know if it's common like Pidgey. I just want it. That feeling of Hawlucha is something I hope that I get in Generation 7. And it's looking like I might not get that feeling because Pokemon loves to show every single Pokemon they created before the game comes out. But now that I love wrestling, that kind of solidifies that foundation for my love of Hawlucha, and I actually can't believe I forgot it on my list, but yeah, I like Hawlucha.
I would also be in favor of Hawlucha. I think it is a beautiful and glorious and unique creature that deserves respect and understanding.
I don't really love Hawlucha. So an argument that I can't make, but I'll at least bring up, I'm white, so it doesn't matter really what I say in reference to this, but the fact that it's just like cultural appropriation, the Pokemon, in the sense that it's like a luchador, and like some Japanese person is like, hey, this thing that people make fun of all the time that's important to people in Mexico, let's just profit off of it, is kind of weird. But then again, it doesn't matter because I'm a white person, so if my perspective on that really doesn't matter. But
it's actually, there are a lot of elements to it that it was inspired by Aztec culture.
And I would also argue that you do have a bit of a misunderstanding of luchador culture, because maybe the people you know make fun of luchadors, but there are a lot of people that hold them in tremendous respect.
That's what I'm
No, I'm not saying only people in Mexico. I'm saying, there are a lot of people in this country who love luchadors and love the lucha style of fighting.
Regardless, that's not my main argument. My main argument is that while it is a very enticing Pokemon, as Steve says, that when you encounter it, it feels like a Pokemon you want to have, but it does not deliver on that promise. The only interesting thing is that it learns Flying Press, which is a confusing move that is both flying and fighting type at the same time. It's extremely underwhelming when you actually have it on your team, and it feels like it's purely just a combination of flying and fighting, and like it doesn't have a personality behind its concept of being a wrestling Pokemon. Like I feel like it doesn't transcend out of that sort of mashup that it is.
So I would argue that it does, though, because luchadors typically in build, aside from a very small amount of luchadors that are really ripped and very large, luchadors are pretty small and quick, and that's kind of their thing, is that that's kind of that luchador training is to be fast and agile, and Hawlucha is, I mean, it's pretty quick. And
it's fine. Put it on the list. I just needed to show my dissent because I don't really like the Pokemon that much.
No, that's fine. I'm probably not going to agree with every Pokemon on the list either, but
I just saw you try to put Golduck twice.
Double Golduck.
Nice.
Well, if we're putting only birds on this list, then yes. That actually worked really well for acceleration purposes. Would you guys be cool if we each cut one Pokemon from our own list?
Okay. Yeah,
I could do that.
We'll start with Micah, I guess, and go through there.
I'm just going to cut Garchomp because I know that's an uphill battle and it's not worth it.
I was going to fight really hard against Garchomp.
Cool as it is, as a missile-faced shark dragon, it's not worth the fight.
Will, Pokemon you'd cut?
I can let Flabébé go. I know it is beautiful and special to me, but it's not beautiful and special to a lot of other people.
Really?
What an upset.
Yeah, crazy. I thought you would fight real hard for that.
No, I'm honest. I know that it's not the strongest thing out there.
Okay. Travis?
I'm going to cut Gourgeist, even though it's like my third favorite Pokemon. I have no defense for why it's cool other than it has multiple forms and it's really cute. I it's purely aesthetic and personal reasons that makes me like it, so I wouldn't be able to defend it.
Okay. I am going to cut Politoed. I like Politoed a lot, but I couldn't defend why. I could defend Politoed just because of the split evolution thing, but that's the only thing I have going for it. And no one here seems shocked that I'm cutting it. So
I thought you were going to cut Omanyte because it's just a meme.
I will probably defend Omanyte pretty hard, actually. But do you guys want to do one round of threatening other people's Pokemon?
Yeah, let's get the knives back out.
All right. we were all too friendly and calm that section. So, Micah, going with you. Any Pokemon you'd cut?
As much as I like Froakie, I feel like we've already addressed Froakie as a possible cut. And I don't feel like there's anything that we can say that's going to bring it back to a positive and put it on the list. As much as of those 3 starters, Froakie is my favorite of the 3. I don't see it going on the list purely because it's already controversial.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to convince Will for that.
Oh, no. No.
I would say that first, you have to think of the consequences of striking Froakie, because I think we need a starter on the list to represent one of the most important things about the games, which is that you play through the game and you grow with your starter Pokemon. And you already said that of the 3, Froakie, of the 3 remaining, that's Cyndaquil, Chespin, Froakie, that Froakie is your favorite of those 3.
Oh, I meant the 3 of X and Y.
Well, Froakie is still the best of those 3, regardless. And if you cut Froakie, you're compromising to starters that are less interesting. I return to my point that Froakie does very well what I think make for some of the best Pokemon designs, namely a Pokemon's particular brand of cute, where, well, Pokemon does have things that are traditionally adorable, that a lot of the Pokemon that come to be known as cute are the ones that have something a little off about them that maybe don't, in Froakie's case, has sort of like a blank expression or a oblivious expression. We're not including Gen 7 Pokemon in this, but as a reference, I would say Rowlet is a Pokemon that I and a lot of people completely love when it was announced, and I feel like Froakie represents that same type of adoration of a Pokemon that seems, or Mimikyu as well, a Pokemon that you feel like you are defending it in your adoration because it seems like it has the world against it, and you, its trainer, are going to train it and show the world that it's actually the greatest Pokemon of all, to show that the underdog has the ability to change the world, and that's one of the things that Pokemon is all about.
Now let's not get crazy here comparing any one Pokemon on this list to Mimikyu.
Nope. Nothing compares to the beauty of that strange, beautiful creature.
I totally get how much you like Froakie, Travis, but I'm probably the only person here without a starter on my list. Starters just don't do it for me. I don't know why.
Have a starter on my list.
You have Eevee, which,
yeah, I mean, that's.
I feel like I'm just dishing out these like awesome defenses, but I'm just being cut down left and right.
I would say that you have one very critical error in your defense. There is no requirement that there be a starter on the final list.
There's no requirement, but I think we would all. I think our list would be, there would be a conspicuous hole in our list if we did not include a starter, and I think starters are an important thing.
I recall a rather famous other list of 10 Pokemon called, I believe, the Kalos 10 that had no starters on it.
That's. I mean, if you are adamant for a starter on the list, I would put Chespin on it. I think, and
I would probably pick Cyndaquil. Honestly,
I think Greninja is the coolest out of the final evolutions, but this isn't a.
That's fine. Knock Froakie off. I'll just keep bleeding every time one of you makes me defend a Pokemon, and I give the best like underdog defense I can, and nobody cares. It's fine.
I mean, I had a pretty good reason for Hawlucha, and it wasn't even my Pokemon.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm the only one. We're all giving good defenses, but it hurts.
Yeah. Will, so who would you cut?
I'd say that Ducklet has to go. I know Gen 5 is my favorite gen, and pretty much every Pokemon in Gen 5, except probably Gothorita and its line, are absolute wonders to me. But Ducklet is, it's like the goofy, yes, the ugly duckling turns into the swan, but it just doesn't do much for me. So yeah, it can go.
It's not even an ugly duckling though. That's the problem.
I know, it's a cutie duckling.
Yeah, it's super
It's
cute.
a cute duck.
Yeah, I like ducks a lot as of Golduck. Somewhat, I really like birds, but that's why Farfetch'd is also on the list. I can see Ducklet going, but I just thought the whole ugly duckling swan thing was really cool, and I think that evolution line, while it's so drastically different, like if you look at Chespin and Chestnut, and that all makes sense when you look at that evolutionary line. If you were to separate and show somebody Ducklet and Swanna, they probably wouldn't see why it would evolve. But at the same time, even though they're so drastically different, that evolution line still makes 100% sense. And I think that's cool, even though I don't like Swanna at all. But Ducklet's really cool. So I will cut the duck.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of other Pokemon on this list that can make the same point. Like, I think Meowth can make the same point.
I mean,
evolution.
Meowth and Persian kind of still look very similar. But
yeah, but I think they make a similar point.
Yeah. Travis, who would you cut?
I'm going to ask the question that I'm sure all the listeners are asking. Why is Talonflame still in the running?
Talonflame is awesome.
Not only is Talonflame one of the most part of the archetype that's one of the most boring archetypes in all of Pokemon design, namely the throwaway bird that you run into at the beginning of the game. But it also is an extremely uninspired design that's just like a bird that's kind of on fire. If Talonflame didn't have the Gale Wings ability, no one would remember this Pokemon at all.
Okay, but let me just point out that Talonflame does have the Gale Wings ability, and the fact that it is a major competitive Pokemon that you can use, that is a beautiful fire phoenix in the sky, but that anybody can get, right? That is its glory, that anybody can get a little fletchling and grow it up into a beautiful, beautiful flaming Talonflame, or, in the end, go to somebody's friend safari and get the one with the hidden ability, so you can have Gale Wings, or have Will breed you a Gale Wings Talonflame.
Yeah, that is the critical error in your argumentation, because if it were a primary ability, I would be totally with you, but it's not. It's a hidden ability. You have to work for it. So it could have been the Pokemon that is an accessible Pokemon that anyone can get, but it's not, right? Because you have to have the Friend Safari version that has the hidden ability. And although I agree that the competitive aspect of a Pokemon is important for how we determine certain Pokemons being on the list, I think Talonflame is an example of a Pokemon that, divorced from its competitive viability, has absolutely no leg to stand on, and you need at least, in my eyes, there has to have to be at least two rationales for why a Pokemon should be on the list. This only has one.
Beautiful, and a flame body Talonflame will help you hatch eggs.
Micah, Steve.
I would rather take Pidgeot over Talonflame if I'm talking straight birds. Also,
Are
Pidgeot.
You a Gen 1er?
Also,
What?
Pidgeot has one of the sweetest Mega Evolutions that gets forgotten about.
Yeah,
Just
Mega
wait till
Pidgeot's
Talonflame
awesome.
gets a Mega Evolution, and it's pure
Listen.
fire.
You can like Gen 1 Pokemon without being a Gen 1er.
I disagree.
That's
No, I love Oddish. I can't lie.
Yeah, you have no Gen 1 Pokemon on your list. That's
Are
amazing.
you a Gen 5er?
Yes, I am.
So we're cutting Talonflame.
I have no real opinion about it, so that's a strike for me.
Who? Oh, my cut. I'm sorry, I was doing this highlighting for our eyes to make that easier. If I was to cut a Pokemon, Will has a lot of Pokemon on this list.
I have so few left.
Yeah,
But you have one on.
You have one on. Yeah. I would Why is Hydreigon here?
Because he's so cool. He's a dark dragon.
All right.
The first of his kind.
I would not argue against Hydreigon at this point if we just cut Reuniclus now.
I can let Reuniclus go. I can let Reuniclus go.
Wow.
I mean, if that's the choice, Reuniclus can go into the flames. Hydreigon is 1,000 Reuniclus.
The flames of all of your remaining fire Pokemon?
Micah, let's do one more round of cuts. Micah, here you go.
Oh boy. All right, Garbodor, really? Come on. Are we really? Is this a conversation we even need to have?
Yes.
It's a cool design. And when I saw it, I was like, yo, they made a Pokemon out of garbage. That's awesome.
I think
but beyond that initial excitement, there's nothing else about it that I care about. It's a callback to things like Muck and Grimer.
Yes.
It's pandering, and that's pretty much it.
I think Garbodor, does a lot of things for Pokemon. I think one is it shows that people think Pokemon is a joke in a way, and this might sound really ironic, but let me hear me out here. A lot of people outside of the Pokemon world would go, "Oh, Pokemon is not creative anymore. Anything after the first 151 are not original. What, are they going to make a trash Pokemon next?" And yes, Garbodor has existed for several years.
But we already made that argument for Vanilluxe.
Yep.
But Garbodor is literal trash.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Let's get it off the list.
Travis?
Steve, I would have been with you until, because I don't feel like saying I would have been with you until Micah made the point that we already have the Pokemon that represents that, namely Vanilluxe.
See, Steve, you shouldn't have let that slide.
So if all that it has going for it is eclipsed by the greatness of Vanilluxe, then take it off.
I'll take it off, but Garbodor is...
I love Garbodor.
...is like Muck, but just better in every way. And Muck was already...
It's better than one Pokemon.
And Muck was already pretty cool.
I like Garbodor a lot, but I wouldn't put... I don't think
I was in favor
put in the top 10.
I was in favor of Garbodor because it's the only secret rare I ever pulled. Oh, that's not true. It was the second secret rare I ever pulled, and it was a beautiful, glorious card.
Will, your cut?
Oh, boy. What do I have left? There's hard things to touch here. And there's nothing on Micah's list that I want to take out anymore. I think Esper is over glorified for derpiness, and that can go.
Micah, what's your stand on Esper?
I like Esper. I think it's the blank stare is pretty cute, but I don't like it enough to argue in its favor, I guess.
Travis?
I liked Esper kind of when it was announced, and then when everyone fell completely in love with it, I was just kind of confused. I thought it was a fine Pokemon to begin with, but I just don't get it. I don't get what's so cool about it.
I think up to this point, Meowth, Persian, Purugly, Delcatty, Skitty, I think they were all very weak designed cat Pokemon. And obviously cats are the life of certain parts of the internet. And I think Esper was what everyone wanted. And I think Meowstic...
Esper is the perfect internet cat, but to me that's a very shallow thing.
Yeah, and I think Esper actually, compared to other cat Pokemon, barely looks like a cat.
Agreed.
Compared to Purloin? Come on.
Yeah. And I get Purloin and Purugly are strong cat Pokemon, but not the cat Pokemon I want. Just like Rockruff is the dog Pokemon I want. And I would say that Rockruff and Esper are the two actual pets that I would want. That being said, I'm okay with cutting Esper because I would rather argue for the rest of the Pokemon surviving on my list. Who made that cut? Will?
Me.
Okay. Travis?
I'm going to cut Shedinja.
Hard no. No.
Oh, God.
No. Shedinja has to stay.
You didn't even let me get my argument.
Oh, make your argument. Hard no.
The only thing that makes Shedinja interesting is that it's a gimmick. There's no place for gimmick on our top 10 list. It's interesting how it evolves in a complicated way where you need an extra slot open and you need, depending on the generation, you need an extra Pokeball.
I didn't even know that.
It's interesting that it has 1 HP and it has Wonder Guard, so it only takes damage if a move is super effective against it. You can't pile gimmick atop gimmick atop gimmick and make an interesting Pokemon. I mean, you can, and that is kind of successful here, but I don't think you can pile gimmick upon gimmick upon gimmick and get an iconic Pokemon. And our list isn't supposed to be cool Pokemon that we kind of like. These are supposed to be the top 10, and I don't think that clever makes for a top 10 Pokemon.
No,
I would argue that Shedinja is not a Pokemon that I kind of like. It is in my top 3 favorite Pokemon of all time because there is literally no Pokemon like it. There is no Pokemon that has the path that it has, and I think that makes it really interesting. I would like to see more Pokemon have interesting ways of entering your journey. Because right now, pretty much everything is just you level it to a certain point, you trade it, you use a stone.
But that's manufactured interest. I think that interest that comes from just the interaction with the Pokemon, with its aesthetic and with its design is a lot deeper of an interest. It's a lot more meaningful of an interest than something that's produced mechanically. I think that's sort of artificial and hollow.
And I would say in support of Micah, if I had more than 24 hours to think about my list, Shedinja would probably be on it. I think Shedinja is an amazing Pokemon. I
think we italicize it for now because I'm on Travis's side, and that's 2 versus 2.
I don't know why Hydreigon got italicized. I sacrificed Ray Nicholas
just because we talked about him. I just italicized is now what we talked about.
I am a huge fan of Shedinja for several reasons. So
okay, we'll come back to that.
While I have conceded to a lot of them, Shedinja is one that I will not concede to. But if you want to argue against it further,
well, I mean, we can spend more time on Shedinja, or we can just whittle down the list even more, right? Because we could just cut 4 more, and then all of a sudden, like, Shedinja's a shoe in. But like, we can come back. Travis, was that your cut, Shedinja? Yeah.
Yes.
My cut would probably be Cyndaquil, and that's really ironic because I got Will a Cyndaquil plush for his birthday, so I know how much Will likes Cyndaquil. But out of your list, Will, I would take Chespin over Cyndaquil in any kind of starter sense.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Cyndaquil is another one that's special to me, but doesn't have to be special to everybody, so I can let it go.
I like Cyndaquil so much more than Chespin, but all right, I'll fall in line. The authoritarian march of Chespin rolls over. another innocent bystander.
Was that 1 round of cuts or 2 rounds of cuts?
Nah, that was 2.
All right, Micah, anyone on somebody else's list that you would want to see go into the top 10? Well, actually, before you do that, let's talk about the Pokemon still up here. So we have Farfetch'd and Omanyte on my list. We have Meowth, Pilus,
including Chandelure and Golduck that are already on the top 10.
Yeah. So top 10 so far are Vanilluxe, Golduck, Chandelure, and Hawlucha. On my list, I have Farfetch'd and Omanyte. Travis has Meowth, Piloswine, and Heracross. Will has Chespin, Victini, Volcarona, and Hydreigon. And Micah has Gengar, Shedinja, Giratina, and Aegislash. Micah, anyone you want to see go on?
I would actually go for, in response to the elimination of Esper, I would actually go for Meowth. I think that Meowth is iconic enough of a Pokemon. I think that it is as much of a staple to the franchise as Pikachu is, and I think that it's a pretty cool cat Pokemon. I like the lore behind it, and I think it deserves a spot.
I was going to argue against Meowth and say that Meowth is special to Travis, and yeah, it's cute in the cartoon, but nah. As a Pokemon, it's more of a marketing tool.
I think Meowth is real great and cleverly used in Pokemon Shuffle. I think Payday is something that, for existing for 20 years, is still unique and special to Meowth, and I like that a lot. And so I could see Meowth going to the top 10.
To change your mind, to show you that Meowth is more than a Pokemon that's special to me and interesting on the show, I'll argue that it has merits divorced from its anime and film portrayals. It's an important Pokemon to an aspect of Gen 1 that I think a lot of people like, which is this the fact that Gen 1 can quickly switch between this feeling of you're sort of in a prairie with Pokemon like Pidgey to now you're in a city and you're encountering Mux and you're encountering Magnemite. But I think most importantly, you're encountering Meowth, because Meowth is the Pokemon that steals your money. This is a Pokemon that has adapted to human life, and I feel like that atmosphere is very important. I think that atmosphere is very different without Meowth, and I think Meowth is important for that reason. Again, Meowth is extremely important in the anime to a lot of people, and Meowth is really cute. So there.
Opinion not changed, but whatever. 3-1. Move it on.
I will move it on. Who made that? Will, who would you nominate?
For going forward?
Yeah, not on your list.
That's so hard.
Meowth.
Gengar. I'll go with Gengar. Once again, he's real cool. He's got like strange typing that a lot of people easily forget what Gengar is. His Mega Evolution is super awesome. And he's another one in Pokken Tournament that I love to play because his ultimate, or whatever you want to call it, his burst, basically takes you to a bizarre Gengar dimension where he picks you up and drops you in his mouth and swallows you. So I love Gengar. And the Gengar painting in 649 Monsters was possibly one of the best there.
Travis, how do you feel about Gengar?
I like Gengar. I like it a lot. I wouldn't be opposed to it being in the top 10. If you had a great argument against it, I'd hear it.
I don't have an argument against it. I don't know why I'm not jumping on the let's put Gengar on the list.
It's because we already have 2 Gen 1 Pokemon, and it seems strange to load up the list like that. But
it also, like, I'm also stranged out because, like, my last 2 Pokemon are Gen 1 Pokemon, and
and neither of them are making the list, and we all know that.
Wow. We'll get to those, I guess. Gengar was the original cover of the Pokemon podcast art. The purple from Gengar was important to me because purple was one of the primary colors. I guess we move them on. I just don't feel confident about that as I felt with the first 5.
If we let Omanyte onto the top 10,
I think I have.
Then I will have failed.
I think I have a really good argument for Omanyte.
I'm sure you do, and I'm not gonna let it happen.
I think out of all the Pokemon on my list, I have the strongest argument for Omanyte.
We'll get to Omanyte when we get to Omanyte.
Or do we want to move Gengar onto the list?
Yeah, I would move him down. Yep.
You haven't given me a reason to not.
Gengar moves down. Travis, you get a pick?
I'm gonna nominate Victini. I think Victini is the point at which the Pokemon Company and Game Freak, I imagine Pokemon Company does most of the sort of promotional distributions more than Game Freak. I think that's where they figured out how to best distribute that type of Pokemon. I know that sounds like a weird reason to say the top 10, but I think Victini represents one of the coolest things about Pokemon, which is that you can have something that is simultaneously possessed by a ton of people, and yet it still feels rare and special and unique, even though everyone has the same thing. the way that Pokemon are designed, the way that they're obtained, makes them feel unique to you, even if that's not necessarily the case. And I think Victini, with its being distributed initially as limited to those people who bought the game when it came out, which sounds like something that's very limiting, when in reality is virtually everyone who gets the game, makes it perfect in communicating one of the most important experiences of a Pokemon, which is making you feel like these Pokemon are yours and they're special. It's also really cute, so I like it.
And also, just so for people who haven't played original Black and White, to explain beyond the fact that, it was a limited distribution to the people who first bought Black and White, it wasn't a distribution just like, oh, you download Victini onto your cartridge. What you got was a ticket for a special boat that took you to a lighthouse island where you had to first defeat Team Plasma, who were trying to get into the lighthouse island, and then discover that the lighthouse keeper had trapped Victini in his basement to keep him safe. And you actually had to battle Victini to convince him that you were good and wanted to help him, and then he would become part of your team. So it wasn't just a simple distribution, but you actually had to earn your Victini. And there's just like everything about Victini is so glorious because he's so cute and whatever, but then you get him angry and he does a V-create at you and you understand what punishment means.
And I would argue that I would just want to get one more thing. And I would also make a similar argument to what I said about Slurpuff, that Victini, I think, represents a lot of the design philosophy of Generation 5 generally, at least in terms of its aesthetics. So I think that's another reason for which it's notable, because it has that the sort of sunshiny aspect to it.
Micah, what do you feel about Victini?
I am less interested in Victini than I am in Celebi, but more interested than Jirachi. And in that respect, I feel like it's a win.
If Travis didn't nominate Victini, I would have. I think Victini was one of the strongest promotional Pokemon before a game came out and did nothing but good before that series dropped and has done nothing but good since.
Well, and I really liked the introduction to Victini, mostly because it harkened back to a lot of the event, like the location-based event stuff that they did in previous generations that we didn't. It was either really convoluted for us or we didn't get, and it was kind of cool to get that like right off the bat.
We have 7 Pokemon on the top 10. Vanilluxe, Golduck, Chandelure, Hawlucha, Meowth, Gengar, Victini.
Moving along.
There's a lot of Gen 1 Pokemon here.
There's only 3.
Yeah, I guess.
And I would say that Gen 1 has a renewed interest with Pokemon Go. So I feel like...
Yeah. We have up for debate Farfetch'd, Omanyte, Piloswine, Heracross, Chespin, Volcarona, Hydreigon, Shedinja, Giratina, and Aegislash. I guess before we move back to Cutthroat, I have to nominate a Pokemon. Out of this list, I guess I would give you guys Shedinja.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I'm only saying that maybe because you guys are so adamant about it, and hopefully in the future you hear me out about the one last Pokemon I want to get on the list. But
well, your hopes are dashed. But one more thing I would say in favor of Shedinja, I think part of Travis's argument against Shedinja is informed by his existing knowledge of how Shedinja comes about. But can you imagine being a kid and you evolve your Ninjask and, all of a sudden, hey, wait, there's this extra Pokemon on my team. What happened? And then you find out there's this cool Shedinja Pokemon there, and how wonderful and what a wondrous moment that creates for people who are unaware of how that's how you get a Shedinja, and it just appears.
Yeah, fine. Put it on a list of top 10 smoke and mirrors. Love it. Right? Top 10 magic tricks. Top 10 vape tricks. Pokemon edition. Love it. Great. Put it on.
I guess now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Pokemon.
Shedinja probably would vape.
There's whatever.
We have
Zoroark and Lucario
would call. I'm not.
All right.
Zoroark and Lucario would be vapors way before Shedinja would. Let's be clear about
probably
that.
True. All right, we have 2 spots left, if my math is correct, and we have 9 Pokemon left on this list.
I feel like whatever we've been doing for the last hour ramped up really quick.
Yeah, I think I like every Pokemon on this list is great. So hopefully our listeners don't think we're just like crapping on Pokemon because we dislike them. I mean,
I'm about to crap on Omanyte because I dislike Omanyte.
All right, let's hear it.
I would say, as a disclaimer, there are no Pokemon on this list of 40 or 39, whatever, that I legitimately don't like.
Except
or like that I legitimately hate.
You sliced Lotad real quick.
I mean, it's the one that I like the least of these. There are a few Pokemon that I like actually hate of all of them that exist.
None of them are on this list, you're saying?
I think that there's merit in the majority of these. But we got to get down to 10.
Do we want to have the Omanyte conversation now?
I feel like we're gonna.
I mean, like, we could keep
Travis
going.
This is getting real hot about
we could keep
already.
going in circles, but we have 9 Pokemon left in 2 spots. So Pokemon's 20 years old, and Omanyte is one of the first 150 Pokemon that fit under the 20-year merit. It is almost old enough to rent a car. A lot of Pokemon get forgotten about. I would say that Lopunny is one Pokemon that got completely forgotten about. And I'm sure there's 3 listeners that are like, no, I never forgot about Lopunny. But Huntail is like another Pokemon that gets completely forgotten about all the time. And I would argue that Omanyte fit that bill, especially when it was compared to a Pokemon like Kabuto, which evolves into Kabutops, which is cooler than Omastar. I'm not arguing Omastar here. I'm just arguing Omanyte. Omanyte, while it became this meme thing of Lord Helix, Omanyte didn't get any special treatment from the Pokemon Company. It didn't get a Mega Evolution. It didn't get any promotional or advertising like Zoroark, like Lucario. It didn't get a Mega Evolution like Tyranitar or Garchomp. Omanyte survived 20 years, and because of the community, because of Twitch Plays Pokemon and other things, Omanyte became its own star. It proved that after 20 years that a Pokemon that was forgotten about 20 years ago and was forgotten about for 20 years could become popular and could actually have fans be excited when they encounter it in the future. There is no other Pokemon that really fit that at all up to this point.
I think that's a fair defense, but I don't think it's sufficient to make it a top 10 Pokemon. And my reasons why: first, the fact that it was forgotten, despite being a Pokemon kind of like, in a lot of ways, like Shedinja. It has a lot sort of special things going for the fact that it's a fossil type. The fact that it's a fossil Pokemon, that you get your choice of one or the other, means that it should have been one of the most memorable Pokemon, and yet it's so bland, it's so unappealing aesthetically, that it still managed to be forgotten about, despite being one of the most mechanically interesting Pokemon, at least in terms of how you get it, is telling about how poor the design of the Pokemon is. Second, I would argue that your point about that its popularity was revived has a fatal flaw in that the thing that was funny and cool about the meme wasn't about the Pokemon Omanyte. It was about the fossil before it. No one thinks praise Omanyte. They think praise Helix, right? Like that's the thing that's been revived. That's the obscure thing about Gen 1 that was revived through Twitch Plays Pokemon, not Omanyte in and of itself. I think you would find most people, if you asked a lot of people I would say that the fact that there are people out there who know the Helix fossil but can't remember the name of the Pokemon that it develops into, which, I mean, I can't prove to you that those people exist, but they probably do. The fact that they might exist, I think, is also telling about the insignificance of Omanyte. And then I would argue that even if I'm willing to concede that, A, the fact that it fell out of existence originally isn't enough to show that it doesn't deserve to be on this list, and B, that it's not even the most salient thing about that meme, about its revival. If somehow both of those arguments are taken down, I would say that even if I grant your complete story that it's beautiful that this Pokemon was revived, in terms of the public consciousness, that says next to nothing about the Pokemon itself. It says more about the community of Pokemon. It says more about the fan base that developed around this sort of auxiliary Twitch Plays Pokemon fandom than it does about the Pokemon itself. And none of those people are liking Omanyte for Omanyte. They like Omanyte because of the strange Ludo narrative that's built around it, which I don't think really says anything about the Pokemon. I don't think even all of this attention gives Omanyte any sort of personality, despite all of the people trying to apply a personality to it.
All I will add to Travis's fantastic arguments are you would have had more luck with Bird Jesus, brother.
I agree.
I think no. I mean, you look at I would argue that all 6 Pokemon in Twitch Plays Pokemon matters. There are a ton of people that would say Twitch Plays Pokemon was stupid. It was just a fad. It didn't matter, but it did. Like, Twitch Plays Pokemon is just as important as Pokemon Go, just as important as any other Pokemon event. There were a lot of people that were super against Twitch Plays Pokemon, like Kenny. He hated it, and that's fine. I'm not saying that you needed to like Twitch Plays Pokemon, but Twitch Plays Pokemon was one of the most important things that mattered for Pokemon and the Pokemon community. That being said, out of those 6 Pokemon that lasted to the end, a lot of Pokemon got released and a lot of accidents happened, but the Helix fossil was there from the beginning, well, since Mount Moon, and made it all the way to the end. They were able to take it to the research factory, actually evolve it, get it, train it, take it to the Elite Four, and I could maybe make that argument for Bird Jesus or Nidoking or Lapras or any of the other Pokemon, but those Pokemon already had a pretty good following. Like, a lot of people know Pidgeot, a lot of people know Lapras, and Omanyte was forgotten about. And a lot of Pokemon, there's 700 now, a lot of Pokemon are forgotten about, and Mega Evolutions and certain promotions help those Pokemon stand out. And Omanyte, if it wasn't for Twitch Plays Pokemon, Omanyte would still be the Huntail of Gen 1. It would still be forgotten. And now you see that, like, even in PokemonCenter.com, Omanyte has its own pin. You don't see a pin for Huntail. You don't see a pin for Lopunny. And Lopunny got the Mega treatment, and it's still, like, not as vital as Omanyte has become.
I would argue that Omanyte is no longer vital, that anyone that at one point it was vital, but that the type of resurgence that Twitch Plays Pokemon gave it was more of a flash in the pan than an enduring vitality that I mean, when I think of Omanyte, I mean, I wasn't the hugest fan of Twitch Plays Pokemon. I liked it. I thought it was interesting, but I wasn't as big of a fan as you, for example. But when I think of Omanyte, I think of a stale meme. I don't even think about the Pokemon anymore. I think Twitch Plays Pokemon did more detriment to Omanyte as a Pokemon than it did benefit. And I think it leaves the Pokemon worse than forgotten. It's annoying to think about for me, and I think of a lot of other people, because it just was this meme that was repeated so often and became grating to hear.
And if anybody loves memes, it's me and Travis. If we don't like this meme, that says a lot.
That's a bad meme.
I mean,
personally, my reaction to that is immediately that I feel like labeling something a meme has become a meme in itself as a rebuttal to something that a lot of people have an interest in, but a small group of people don't. And I feel like the amount of interest that is put into Omanyte through the course of the interest that was gained in Twitch Plays Pokemon, regardless of what you want to call it, it was interest nonetheless. And it was interest that a lot of people had.
Yeah, but you're using past tense, and I think that's telling that interest is gone.
With Pokemon Go now, I mean, I've been out with Micah. There were 400 people in one place in Milwaukee playing Pokemon Go, and I can tell you that 90% of them have had zero interest in Pokemon before Pokemon Go, but I can tell you one thing. I guarantee you that the 90% of those people know Omanyte, just like they know Charmander, just like they know Squirtle, just like they know Bulbasaur. You know what they probably don't know? Farfetch'd. And Farfetch'd is one of my favorite Pokemon, but I think that Farfetch'd in itself, like I would cut Farfetch'd right now and just keep Omanyte, and a lot of people, they know that Farfetch'd is one of my top favorite Pokemon. That's why it was in D&D. But that goes to my original point of like Farfetch'd hasn't gotten any special treatment. It probably never will get special treatment. It will never get a Mega Evolution, and Omastar will probably never get a Mega Evolution, and that's fine. But Omanyte did that on its own 20 years later.
It didn't do it on its own. It had a huge artificial boost from this Twitch Plays Pokemon phenomenon.
From the community. And like everything about Pokemon is community. Like Pokemon Go is a terrible game if you're just playing it by yourself. The best part about Pokemon Go is going to Lake Park in Milwaukee and seeing 400 other people play Pokemon Go. Like no one in Twitch Plays Pokemon started that game and went, we need to get the Helix fossil. Like that is the preferred fossil. It was an accident, and everyone accepted that. And Omanyte went on that journey and became a meme. Yeah, but like, what Pokemon isn't a meme at this point?
I think it's a beautiful story. I think it is. I think I think you're correct that the community is extremely important to Pokemon. I don't think that is the Pokemon community. I think that that Twitch Plays Pokemon was wildly popular, but it was not even close to the overall community of Pokemon, which is much, much larger than it. And if we're going to pick something that highlights the Pokemon community, we don't pick something that's a highlight of a strange subset of it that not everyone even enjoyed. Like if we're going to pick a Pokemon that was an underdog that the community rallied around and really liked, then we wouldn't have knocked out Esper. We've already knocked out Esper, and Omanyte is an example of a smaller, strange niche that doesn't represent the overall Pokemon community. And I think putting it on the list would frankly be not a glorification of the Pokemon community and what Pokemon can do to revitalize interest, but just a glorification of a phenomenon that was at best tangential to Pokemon and what it means.
Still not ready to cut it.
Cut it. Omanyte has to go.
Micah?
I'm having a really hard time agreeing with the opposing arguments, and I feel like I'm still in support of Omanyte.
All right. I mean, we can keep debating Omanyte, but let's. It's 2 versus 2. Let's move on to another Pokemon.
Who thought there would be such a hot debate for Omanyte? My goodness.
Yeah, exactly, because it's terrible and it shouldn't be on this list. The fact that you think, that you're surprised that there was a hot debate about it means that you already concede that it has no place.
I mean,
there's
3 on the final list that I would go back and cut. I would cut Shedinja, I would cut Gengar, I would cut Meowth. I'm just saying, like, we don't all have to agree.
How did Shedinja get on the list? Didn't Steve and I?
Because I had to pick one. I had to pick one that wasn't my other Pokemon, so I picked Shedinja.
Ugh.
So
all right. What are we doing now? Who picks what?
Well, that was Omanyte was open discussion, so let's openly discuss another Pokemon. I guess I'll start it. Heracross can go.
Yeah, Heracross is hot garbage in the trash. Everybody knows Pinsir is better.
Pinsir is better in every way.
I want to hear Mike's opinion.
I mean, I'll say off the bat that I don't have like a great supporting argument for it, but I do have a fond memory of Heracross, or just fond memories in general, of when they were debuting Gen 2, and a lot of it was coming out through other means like the show and things like that before we actually got them in the game, or before we actually got the games, at least in the US. And that was one of the few first Gen 2 Pokemon that I saw without actually seeing them in the game, and it was pretty exciting. But aside from that, I don't have any like real love lost for Heracross.
It'd be an uphill battle, and Heracross was like number 9 on my list or something. I'm fine with taking it off.
All right.
Are we just at this point just arguing? Like,
yeah, we're just
it's all open discussion.
It's all open.
Giratina can go. Giratina is just OP, old school. You know,
I think of Giratina and I think, oh my god, that thing is going to be so annoying to knock out. Like, that is the first thing I think about Giratina, about how annoying it is to deal with battling, and the fact that I think about battles before I think about anything else about the Pokemon, despite all they try to do with the distortion world and all of the, it's about like void and like other dimensions, and yet I don't even think about those things, and I just think that it's ugly and annoying to deal with means that it is a failure, in my opinion.
And it's the Pokemon devil, so there you go.
To me, there's a lot of personal interest that I have in it, mostly because it is inspired by a lot of the things that I like, things in pop culture that I've been a big fan of. It representing the other world or the upside down, or and I like it a lot for that specifically, but for other things as well, like the its abilities to go through the other world through reflections and things like that. And I if it's not clear from my list, I like ghost Pokemon a lot, which I didn't really realize until I was writing this list. But I do like that it's a ghost dragon. Like that's pretty cool to me. But it's not something that I feel like I could really defend enough.
Yeah,
I would not be heartbroken if it didn't make it.
I think Giratina was the opposite of Arceus and didn't do a good enough job being the opposite.
I would argue, though, and this is probably going to start a different debate, which we can maybe have at a different time, that Giratina of the front of the box Pokemon is probably one of the coolest.
Oh, no.
Reshiram and Zekrom are cooler.
We don't have time for this debate.
Just because
Reshiram and Zekrom are cooler. Ho-Oh and Lugia are cooler.
Yveltal is cooler.
Xerneas is cooler.
This is the worst.
I think we cut Chespin. No other starter has made the list. I don't get why Chespin made.
Chespin can go. I think Chespin is a great representation of what you want in a starter Pokemon, because it is very clearly like your friend and companion. And it's not a pet. It's bipedal. It's just like a cute little buddy to have with you. And I think that's why a lot of people love Chespin. But I'm okay to let it go in comparison to other things here.
All right, we got Farfetch'd, Omanyte, Piloswine, Volcarona, Hydreigon, Aegislash. Travis, sell me on Piloswine.
I'm surprised it's still. It was never argued. I'm surprised it still hadn't been brought up. Piloswine is my favorite Pokemon for a few reasons. One, I think it is a great example of how you can build a Pokemon around its typing, that you can take ice and ground, these things that don't seem to fit together in any way, and then think, well, woolly mammoth or those types of creatures are sort of evocative of both ground and ice, the fact that they were alive in the Ice Age, and that these sort of brown mammalian hulking things. And yet, you take these two concepts, you mash them together, and then you figure out how to build a design out of that. And I feel like that's what a lot of Pokemon are, and Piloswine is a great example, and I would say one of the coolest. Piloswine is also one of the best second stage, in my opinion, one of the coolest second stage evolution Pokemon. A stage that often gets forgotten because the second stage is so often something that is purely a transitional period, and the fact that Piloswine was originally the final evolution until Gen 4 introduced Mamoswine means that the whole Swinub to Mamoswine with Piloswine in the middle line, each of them has its distinct personality, with Piloswine being very different from its predecessor and Mamoswine, in that it has the type of appeal of a Pokemon that doesn't seem, that it's not outward facing. It's not like a cute Pokemon that's like looking out and it's like its design is not meant to make you think it's cute. Its design is in the world. It feels like an animal that is indifferent to you, and the fact that it's one of few Pokemon that feels like that is very cool. And I feel like it's a Pokemon that you can learn to love a lot. I certainly have, and I feel like that's a lot of what makes a Pokemon good, is that you learn to love it over time. Pilotwine's a perfect example of that because it doesn't try to make you like it from the beginning.
Yeah, still think it's very idiosyncratic to Travis.
Micah?
I have never had any real interest in Pilotwine.
I knew I wasn't winning that one, but I had to defend. It's my favorite Pokemon.
It was a great defense. It was a really solid
defense.
defense.
I'm not on the Pilotwine bandwagon, but a fun story for our listeners is when Travis initially emailed me, he spelled Pilotwine wrong.
Yeah, and it's really embarrassing. I spelt it as pillow swine, which is the cardinal sin.
No, that email that you sent is like one of the most adorable things in the world.
Yeah, we'll have to read it on the show, and I'll be embarrassed or whatever.
It's super adorable. It's like
I was like 17 or something, 16, 17.
Yeah, you were pretty young. I mean, I was young too, and I was dumb. I'm still dumb, but it's such a good moment in history of how much this show has grown.
Yeah, I was a super fan of this show.
And look where you are now.
And now
debating Omanyte's existence.
Getting furious at you. You think Omanyte is one of the 10 best Pokemon of all time. Or that it represents the Pokemon community. That is insulting to me.
Strangely enough, I've never enjoyed this program at all.
Yeah.
Wow. My favorite was when I was on an episode for the first time, and I asked Will if he had heard it, and I asked his opinion, and he said, "I don't listen to any episode that I'm not on."
What a lie.
I think you should all listen to the episodes you're on because it makes you better podcasters, or at least I hope that I have become a better podcaster. Let's talk about Aegislash. Why is this Pokemon still here?
Well, I feel Aegislash is transformative. I think it's just an incredible. Well, besides the fact that it actually literally does transform between its attack form and its defense form during battle based on the type of move that you're about to use or that you've just used. I just think that unique and special aspect to it is a real sort of setting stone for what can be done to keep Pokemon interesting and to sort of set a foundation for what can happen in the future if they keep up with that type of creativity. So it's both an enjoyable and beautiful Pokemon to have on your team, but also, it works in competitive, that it actually, you can have it on a competitive team and survive and do good work with an Aegislash. They're really hard to work against unless you really know what you're doing. So I would, I really like Aegislash a lot, but I also have a penchant for ghost Pokemon, as does Micah.
I don't like Aegislash I like Aegislash, but I don't feel like it fits in the top 10. First, because aesthetically, I think it is a very busy design. There's so many loops and circles that it's, that it hurts the eyes a little bit. Second, I think that while there is some validity to Will's argument in favor of it, that the uniqueness of how it operates is a potential for where the game can evolve in the future, I don't necessarily think that it is while it is a possibility of where to go, I don't think it's a great choice to do that. I don't think making the game more complicated, I think that's rarely a good choice, especially if it's just making the game more complicated for one Pokemon's sake, because it purely becomes if you as a player remember how this Pokemon operates, then you will be more successful, as opposed to introducing a mechanic that makes playing the game more fun. It doesn't make playing the game more fun unless you are in one of the few circumstances where you're playing with or against an Aegislash, and I think that's a worthless complication to something that has little to no impact overall. If you want to make the game more interesting going down the line, you make larger changes to the gameplay or larger streamlinings to the gameplay to make it more elegant, or to make it a better experience. And I don't think making one complicated Pokemon is at all a great step forward in making the game better.
I think
that it's like a low like a softer form of presenting different forms in a situation like combat where nothing else really has that kind of mechanic where it actively changes in combat based on what it's doing. And I think that like Will is saying, is potential for making battle more interesting rather than just visually interesting rather than just looking at some static creatures staring at each other until one of them does something. Even beyond that, there are lots of things about Aegislash that I'm personally in love with. It, next to Gengar, is my favorite Pokemon. And the reason for that is because it's the perfect storm for me of what it's based on and what it does, that it's so far up my alley that it's parked in the driveway. It's just such a, like, the idea that it's based a lot on Excalibur and the Sword and the Stone, and that it has this ability to determine who is destined to be king based on their qualities and things like that. I am a very big fan of fantasy, low and high fantasy, and Arthurian legends and stuff like that. If anybody's seen my Twitch channel, then they know 100% that that's the case. I grew up with a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering and like high fantasy stuff, and I've grown to love a lot of low fantasy stuff too. And I really like that this combines those interests with a pre-existing interest in Pokemon. And on top of that, it's a ghost type. It's it does really interesting things in battle. I think just generally I'm in love with it.
Before your argument, I would have been a hard no on Aegislash, but your argument was really good and strong. First, think that somehow you have gotten the most Pokemon on the list from your picks.
I wasn't going to say anything.
If we minus our tie of Chandelure, you have 3. Will and I have 1. Travis has 2. That being said, I think Aegislash is a complicated design. I think it's complicated in battle. I think Honedge is a stronger representation of that line. Dual Blade is garbage, but your argument for Aegislash is super good, and I respect that, and I want to agree with you, but at the same time, I feel like you and Will also agreed on Shedinja, and Travis and I were against Shedinja, and you and Will agreed on Aegislash, and I think the Aegislash argument, and technically Travis and I are against Aegislash, I think the Aegislash argument far surpasses any argument you had for Shedinja, and I feel like Shedinja should be removed, and Aegislash should be replaced with it.
If that's the motion, I would be. If that's what happens, I'd be fine with removing Shedinja in favor of Aegislash. I think Aegislash is better than Shedinja.
I'm okay with that.
Will?
I'm not okay with that, but that's 3 against 1, so.
The upset Aegislash makes it
the upset.
What a turnaround. All right. So pretty much Micah has...
Rest in peace.
If we're going to have one gimmick Pokemon, at least be the cooler one.
They're all gimmicks. All right,
we have...
If we're going to have one mechanical gimmick Pokemon, at least have it be the cooler one.
We still have 8, and we have 4 Pokemon left. Farfetch'd, Omanyte, Volcarona, Hydreigon. I'm willing to cut Farfetch'd to make Omanyte work.
No, Farfetch'd is your better choice.
Farfetch'd is your better choice. Omanyte will never be on this list.
I would argue that too. As much as I argued in favor of Omanyte, I would argue that Farfetch'd is a better choice for this list.
Omanyte,
especially because it has significance to the show.
Yes, totally. And I would love both to be on the list, but I know will fight very hard for either Volcarona or Hydreigon. That being said, even if you ignored the success that Omanyte got from Twitch Plays Pokemon and just look at Omanyte being relevant again
You can't ignore what made it relevant and focus focus on it as being relevant. That doesn't make any sense. You can't divorce those.
The point I'm making is that Omanyte proves that a Pokemon can become popular even after so many years and Pokemon not giving it special treatment.
But it's the fact that it's popular among people that probably haven't played against a group of people that as a whole probably haven't played more than the first set of games, a group of people that probably are...
I mean, Micah and I are hardcore Pokemon fans, and we watch Twitch Plays Pokemon from start to finish.
Yeah.
I think a lot of...
I did too, but I think that
I think what you're arguing is that the majority of the people who watched it were not people that are fans like Steve and I are.
Right, and I think that majority looks down upon those of us who actually play through the rest of the game, and a lot of them are the Gen 1er type that are sort of not open-minded to the fact that the game has improved over time. And I think if we're going to say Omanyte is one of the best Pokemon, you're validating it. If your argument is that Omanyte is an example of how the community can build a Pokemon up from obscurity, that is not the Pokemon fan community. That's a separate entity altogether. Farfetch'd is a better Pokemon.
I think that does speak for something. Like Pokemon Go wouldn't be as successful with just hardcore Pokemon players. I think that the community that our listeners know that I love Farfetch'd, and Farfetch'd is a great Pokemon, and hopefully one day Farfetch'd would get a Mega Evolution to, build and give it that relevance again. But at the same time, besides being a duck with a leak, I can't tell you why Farfetch'd is good.
Besides being a Pokemon that wasn't relevant and then was, there's nothing about Omanyte itself that makes it good.
But Omanyte is like...
It was definitely of its time, it was unique in that it was one of very few Pokemon that had fossil evolutions, and it was something that you got early on as a choice that you had to make.
And I think a lot of people would agree that it's the lesser of those two choices.
Right.
Ooh, that I don't know that I can.
Yeah, those three choices rather, if you count Aerodactyl or not Aerodactyl. Yeah, Aerodactyl.
Look, what other Pokemon was a loser and just not a good Pokemon then that became something more than that? Like what other...
Nuzleaf because of Nuzlocke Challenge.
Yes. But it's not on the list.
Yeah. But I'm saying that the fact that other Pokemon like that exist means that this isn't a unique situation, and I don't think that it is the most representational one of the story you're trying to argue deserves a spot, because this is a group of people that are not the Pokemon community as a whole.
I still think that Twitch Plays Pokemon is the Pokemon community.
I think that Twitch Plays Pokemon was an important role for Pokemon. It was an important thing for Pokemon. And I think that I'm of the mind that anything that brings a lot of attention, a lot of positive attention to something that I'm a fan of is generally a positive experience. As long as it's not brought about in like malicious means, it's a good thing. I think that Twitch Plays Pokemon was a great experience for a lot of people that weren't necessarily interested in Pokemon, people that were Gen 1ers, quote unquote, and people that have been fans the entire time. And regardless, it was something that brought everybody an interest or a renewed interest in the franchise through very unconventional means. And I think that is an important thing to have for this franchise, especially for a franchise that has slowly over time grown a little bit staler for people who were big fans of it early on. And I think that a lot of the gimmicks and the jokes and whatever that came out of Pokemon, Twitch Plays Pokemon, were good experiences for everybody who were experiencing them. They weren't just memes. They weren't just gimmicks. They were shared experiences that everybody got to celebrate over. And Omanyte was the epitome of those shared experiences and celebration. That being said, I've already said that I feel like Farfetch'd is a better choice of the two.
I mean, I don't want people to look at the list and go, oh, Farfetch'd is on there because it's one of Steve's favorite Pokemon.
I think a ton of people like Farfetch'd. Like everyone I know loves Farfetch'd.
So
it's a pretty great Pokemon.
I would rather have people look at the list and go, Omanyte is on there because of Twitch Plays Pokemon, and that Twitch Plays Pokemon was so incredibly important to just the Pokemon community in a whole. Like, it was one of the most important things to happen to the Pokemon community.
So I would like to propose.
In what way? It was a.
I would like to propose a compromise, given that we've been going for like 5 hours. I feel the amount of discussion that we've had over Omanyte gives it some amount of merit in that it is a hotly contested concept amongst ourselves, and recognizing that Twitch Plays Pokemon was a huge event during its time, and Omanyte is emblematic of that period of time. And also, in my own personal interest, I would really like to see Farfetch'd on the final list. I'd be willing to sacrifice my final two and allow those two to be on the list.
Sure, Pokemon is an important part of Pokemon is that it's embroiled in controversy completely. So if we didn't have a controversial pick, then what would we be doing? Sure, put it on the list. I hate it, and I think it's gross and disgusting that our attempt to show that the effect the Pokemon community has on a thing is a small subsection of it. But whatever, put it on.
But Will's right. The fact that we're so divided on it makes it a pretty important thing.
I think it was probably the most talked about
itself.
Pokemon on this.
It's not just Omanyte itself either. It's the entire idea of Twitch Plays Pokemon and events like Twitch Plays Pokemon and the effect that they have on the franchise and the community.
I mean, I could have picked Lapras or Nidoking or Zapdos or Pidgeot, but those were all pretty well known compared to Omanyte, and that was kind of the point I was trying to drive to.
You've already
much like early on you're divided on your choice between an Omanyte or a Kabuto.
I mean, I would rather see Hydreigon on the list than Farfetch'd, but I
would rather see Farfetch'd. Farfetch'd is cooler.
Micah?
And you were the one that made the original attack on Hydreigon, so...
Yeah, I didn't want to really attack Volcarona because I didn't have a good argument of why, but I like Hydreigon way more than Volcarona. I like Hydreigon because of the trading card game. I like Hydreigon because it has 3 heads. I like Hydreigon because of its German naming scheme. Like, Hydreigon has a lot of things going for it. I think Hydreigon is a better pseudo-legendary than Tyranitar. I think it's a better pseudo-legendary than Garchomp.
I have a lot of... I mean, there are things about Hydreigon that, on the surface, I don't really care that much about it, one way or another, but I do also like a lot of what it's based on and what it's inspired by, in the same way that I like what a lot of Aegislash is based on. But if it's a debate between either Hydreigon or Farfetch'd, I feel like Farfetch'd is more deserving of a top 10 slot. Not just because it's something that is it's not a Pokemon that's your favorite Pokemon or one of your favorite Pokemon, but because of the impact that it's had on the podcast, the interest that has grown in it from people who are followers of the podcast, and because the majority of people who are familiar with Farfetch'd generally like it.
Yeah, I think Farfetch'd is a Pokemon that tons and tons of people love.
I think if you would have just stopped and said, I think Farfetch'd is a Pokemon, that would have been really good. Yeah, Farfetch'd is a Pokemon. Will, your call. You want Farfetch'd or do you want one of yours?
Oh, I already voted for Farfetch'd.
All right.
I sacrificed my children to the flames.
I want to point out that Will was so adamant about his list, yet at this point, he only got one on.
Rest in peace, fire types.
Is there any one on the list that we want to bring off besides, obviously, Omanyte could be debated for hours more? Or are we satisfied with the 10 we have?
I think that these, the ones on the list have been through the ringer of debate and discussion and deserve their place.
I agree.
All right. We have for our listeners.
I'll just write a long Scalia-style dissenting opinion about
Nice.
For our listeners, in no particular order, we have.
I'll say something about jiggery pokery.
We have Vanilluxe, Golduck, Chandelure, Hawlucha, Meowth, Gengar, Victini, Aegislash, Omanyte, and Farfetch'd. The last part of this podcast is arranging them into a top 10.
Oh no, aren't we already? Oh god, we've been here so long. We can't do this.
Omanyte must be number 1.
I'm supposed to.
Honorable mention Shedinja. I just want to shout that out real quick before. Rest in peace.
I think organizing them will only take
valiantly
10 to 15 minutes. I think that's actually pretty easy.
What is your proposed organization?
What do you guys think is number 1, I guess? And we go from there.
Chandelure.
I think that the fact that Chandelure is on here twice is enough to put it in the top slot.
I would have said Gengar, but sure.
No, Gengar's 2.
Really? You would put Gengar that high?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
What? I don't agree to that.
Well, I mean, I would obviously want Vanilluxe to be number 1, but I know that's not happening.
I would put Vanilluxe way higher than Gengar.
I would too.
I mean, I think because Chandelure was on the list twice, and that Will said that he forgot to put it on his list, I would say that's number 1.
Sure. Yep.
But I don't know. I still am not adamant on Gengar.
Oh, I wasn't adamant about it either, but I thought that was going to be the softball that we would all agree upon, and I turned out to be wrong.
I would put
I thought it was going to be a safe pick, but apparently not.
I mean, I can argue why it's my favorite Pokemon, but I don't think that I pretty much already did that.
I
don't think that's gonna benefit any of us in any way.
I would put Hawlucha, I would put Vanilluxe, I would put Victini, I would put Omanyte, I would put Golduck.
I will recede Gengar to the 3rd slot if Vanilluxe makes it to the second slot.
I would love for Vanilluxe to be number 2. That would make that would make staying up until past my bedtime worth it.
I mean Vanilluxe was the first Pokemon we bolded.
Right, and the reason that it deserves a slot is because of a lot of the arguments that we made in defense of the. It's ironic too because a lot of the arguments that we made for Vanilluxe were in opposition to the like Gen 1er arguments, but we wound up with like half of the list is Gen 1 Pokemon.
Yep.
Will you go with Vanilluxe being number 2?
Yeah, that's fine. Not like I'm going to be able to win any debates on that one.
I think I don't know. I'm just talking out loud here to move this conversation along. But
I like Victini. Or no, I think Gengar. Didn't Micah? You said you were gonna do that to
I would
give Gengar number 3.
2nd slot to give Gengar 3rd slot.
I guess.
Yeah. Gengar's
I'm fine
there.
All right.
Absolutely.
Victini number 4. I think
I like Victini at number 4.
it was Will's only pick. Micah, you good with Victini at 4?
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I think Golduck was an easy pick for everyone. I think
Golduck's good.
Hawlucha.
Yeah, I think so too.
Golduck.
I think Golduck and then Hawlucha.
Yeah.
Right.
What do we have left here? We have Meowth. We have Aegislash. We have Omanyte. We have Farfetch'd.
I would have Farfetch'd next.
Yeah.
You guys want Farfetch'd that high?
I love Farfetch'd.
I'm in breaking order. I'm gonna say that we put Omanyte at 10 just because it was such a controversial pick.
I agree with that.
Yep.
And Farfetch'd after Hawlucha.
Yeah.
I think
3 birds in a row.
I think that Aegislash.
Meowth.
Meowth and Aegislash because Aegislash barely made the cut.
I would agree with that.
All right, we have our list. So for our listeners following along, who would have guessed this podcast would be almost 4 hours long? Gosh. We have
Very heated.
from number 10 up, Omanyte, Aegislash, Meowth, Farfetch'd, Hawlucha, Golduck. You have 3 birds in a row here. Victini, Gengar, Vanilluxe, and Chandelure is its super effective top 10 Pokemon from generations 1 through generation 6. And none of this will matter when generation 7 comes out.
Because all 10 of them will be Mimikyu.
Whew, what an episode.
The fact that I'm happy about 7 out of 10 of them is a good sign, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with this list. What about you guys?
I feel good about it. I mean, I there are a couple that I don't really care about that much, but on the whole, I like what wound up on here. I mean, really, aside from Victini, I guess the everything else I have an interest in.
All right. Well, that's that. Will, you feeling good?
Nope.
All right. Good.
Completely disagree with everything.
That's exactly what we expect out of you.
Perfect. This has gone exactly as planned. Travis, where can our listeners find you?
Twitter.com/TheTravisW.
Will?
Wash in the sink.
Micah?
You can find me on Twitter at Micah the Brave, and you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Micah the Brave.
Awesome.
Which I canceled tonight so that we could do that.
Well, I told you we'd be done by 8. It is now 10 o'clock.
I had the foresight to cancel it in advance because I figured it would go a lot longer than 8 o'clock.
I really didn't think it'd go this long. You can follow me on Twitter at DraggingALake. You can also follow the podcast on Twitter at Pokemon Podcast. If Kickstarter backers are okay with this going out to more people, I will make it happen. But technically, this is only exclusive for their ears. And we'll probably do something like this in the future. Maybe we'll just stick to one generation or something. I don't know. We'll find out. I had a lot of fun doing this, though.
Same.
It was a good time.
It was really cool to actually...
I will probably be angry over the Omanyte thing for a very long time.
We learned a lot about each other.
And I think it was cool that we could properly defend Pokemon in a great conversation. Like, it wasn't just because, oh, Golduck's cool because he's blue. It was because of this, which I think is really cool.
I would just like to point out on a closing note that everybody doubted my picks immediately going in, including myself.
The list,
and I walked out with 4 on.
All right, cool. Well, keep listening to the Pokemon podcast because we are
super effective.
Super effective.
Up past our bedtime.